You have big shoes to fill. The giants came before you. They've written down the blueprint. They've handed it to you. It's up to you to pick it up, to soak it in, to read it, to cultivate it, to perfect it, to master it.
This episode of Choices Not Chances podcast is sponsored by Louisiana Gun Shop, located on Highway 90 West in Broussard, Louisiana, just south of Lafayette. For more information, stay tuned at the end of this episode.
Hey guys, welcome back to Choices Not Chances podcast, and we got a good one for you today. Today we're going to be interviewing Sergeant Major Downing. He enlisted in the Marine Corps in 2002 and got stationed with 1-4 after completing training. He was on the LOD in Kuwait and crossed the line of departure into Iraq in 2003 in support of Operation Iraqi Freedom. Then a Lance Corporal, would take part in several combat engagements in fighting against the Iraqi army, as well as the elite Republican Guard and the Fedayeen forces in Nasiriyah, from Nasiriyah to Baghdad. Later on, he would return, and multiple deployments later, and multiple engagements that are written about, that are in the books, that are in the history books, and things that young Marines growing up now are, if they aren't being taught about it, they should be taught about it, because we're never 8 to 10 more years away from a major conflict. So we're going to get into some of those engagements, some of those emotions, sensations, and stories of war, and get it from the horse in this case. So Sergeant Major Downing, I appreciate you coming on, taking the time, and I've been looking forward to this for the last couple of weeks, so thanks for coming out.
Thanks, brother. I'm glad to be on. It's a pleasure. Yeah,
man. So you have a pretty large following as far as your social media world and your YouTube world, and you go by the handle of, it's Brent0331, right? 0331.
Right. Yep.
So you got that going for you, and you got gear reviews and different things, different interviews going on. And so I've been following you for a little bit. I got recommended and connected to you by, a mutual fan and mutual supporter. And so for the last 3 weeks, I've been really dug in and tried to, figure out how this interview would go. But first, just like any other interview, I want to know, who you come from, where you come from, siblings, and kind of that beginning youth, that adolescence, because I find that generally what I'm seeing is that people with a certain childhood, let's say, or adolescence, can create leaders, and certain people can't. And there's two distinct differences between those rearings, in my opinion. And so, where do you come from?
Well, I hate to admit this, but I was actually born and raised in Southern California.
Right on.
But and I'll explain myself here in a minute, but so I was born in Southern California. My father was actually a professional baseball player. His name was Brian Downing.
Okay.
He started with the White Sox in the 70s, and then the late 70s and 80s he played with the then California Angels.
Okay.
They would change that name years after the fact. What is it? Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim or some crap like that. But back then it was the California Angels. So I grew up down there in a city called Yorba Linda. Went to elementary school and the beginning of middle school there.
Okay.
But while I was out there as a young man, I got interested in the military. Growing up, I was watching war movies. Some of the ones that stand out to me were, Lee Ermey, Full Metal Jacket, and Siege of Fire Base Gloria. I don't know. A lot of people don't know about that one, but that one was probably my childhood favorite.
Yeah.
Green Berets with John Wayne. And I was actually steering towards like Army, right?
Sure.
Especially after watching Green Berets with John Wayne. But then at some point, and I don't remember how I got introduced to this, I got introduced to a program called the Young Marines.
Okay.
And my parents put me in that, and the Marine Corps, I don't even know if I knew what the Marine Corps was at that point, but I went in there, and the Young Marines is like, think if the Boy Scouts was just like emulated and contorted by the Marine Corps, like that's what it is.
Okay.
Right? Like you go through a boot camp and everything, and I tell you, dude, they took my mind and just molded me. And from that point on, it was I'm gonna be a freaking Marine.
Hell yeah.
And this is this was a young age. I think I was maybe 8 or 9 when I started.
Wow.
Yeah. So.
And your parents were right on board, kind of fostering that along?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right
it was Tustin. So Tustin, California, there was a Marine Corps air station there at the time. They had like CH-46 squadrons there.
Okay.
There was Tustin El Toro Air Station. Those have since closed down a long time ago. But that's where the young Marine, it was almost like being in the reserves. It was like once a month or something, you would go down there and do your young Marine training.
Oh yeah.
So my, I think it was 8th grade, we moved to Texas. My father played his last 2 years of Major League Baseball with the Rangers.
Okay.
And he retired in '92. So shortly after that, we moved to Texas in Salina, Texas, small town. And like football's God there. and coming from California, like, playing sports wasn't really a big thing. I played some little league, but I kind of veered away from that once I got in the Young Marines, because like I kind of found out that like, hey, the military is my passion. Once I got in the Young Marines, it was like, dude, that's what I wanted to do. Moved to Texas, started going to school there, 8th grade, freshman year, sophomore year. It kind of got to the point where like, hey, high school football is so big in small town Texas that like, if you're an able-bodied male, like you have to play football. So I kind of viewed it almost like in the terms of like, hey, I'm serving my country, right? Or in this case, serving my school. So I jumped into the football realm, and again, coming from like, Southern California, like football wasn't a big thing where I was.
Sure.
So I had to kind of like learn the sport. And so I jumped in there, played 3 years high school football. So I'm not saying I was great or anything. It definitely wasn't a starter. I had to, again, when Salina, Texas, big time. Anybody from North Texas like knows Salina high school football.
Oh yeah.
And so I pretty much just had to start from the ground up. But it was fun. I enjoyed it, man. Hitting football was like the one thing where it's like, when you start sucking, you get mad, and when you get mad, you get better. Right?
Yeah.
Whereas like baseball, it's the complete opposite.
Yeah.
You start sucking, you get angry and frustrated, and you get worse.
Yep. Getting that head. Oh yeah.
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 So
football fosters that unbridled aggression pretty well. That works well there. Yeah.
100%.
Right on. Now, did you have did you mention the siblings? Did you have siblings?
Yeah, I had 2 older brothers. They were both like following my father's footsteps. They were both trying to become professional baseball players.
Okay.
But me, it's just like my number one goal, man, was like, I grew up watching like Red Dawn and stuff.
Oh yeah.
It's like I had it in my mind, like, hey, God put me on this earth to fight communism.
Oh
so
yeah. That's why I'm here.
Yep. I was going to join the Marine Corps, and World War III or something was going to happen. I was going to go fight and kill communists. So
it kind of went that way for you.
Yeah. It kind of just different enemy.
Different enemy.
So.
Yeah. Well, right on. So you come in 2002. So I would say that. Well, I wouldn't say anything. I would ask the impact that 9/11 had on you. But it sounds like you were already called to do that and already on your way.
It's really funny. I found the other day. I found my delayed entry like certificate,
nice.
So like the day you like sign the contract and you're now in the a pulley. It was like mid-August. It was like August 13th of 2001 was when I was like freaking signed a contract.
So no impact, no bearing, and then you're in, and then it happens.
Right.
The
next month.
Now, when you enlisted and signed in, you signed in for 0300, or you wanted to fight?
Yeah.
Okay,
I wanted to be a grunt. I wanted to be an infantryman. Actually, funny story, and people have to remember, like, this is pre 9/11, right? I wanted to be an infantryman, and my recruiter at the time, I went in. I'm like, fucking 03. I don't give a shit. How my ASVAB turns out. Like, I want to be a grunt.
Sure.
So I do it, and I qualified for infantry, which isn't hard to do.
Yeah.
But my recruiter comes up and he's like, hey man, and he starts talking to me about security forces.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, oh yeah, fucking, this is like, kind of made it, started to paint it as being like the next step, like high speed type stuff. And I was like, oh yeah, that sounds pretty good, and this is again pre-war.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, yeah, I'll do that. And maybe a week or two passed. He's like, yeah, the slots for that filled up. I'm not gonna be able to offer that. And I'm like, oh, okay, no problem. So thank God, thank God it didn't happen, because that would have completely taken me on a, completely different pathway.
Sure. That happened with me. I went to Fast.
Did it?
Yep. I went to Fast Company, and you could look at it two ways, right? You could look at it and say, my other, the grunts in my class that weren't security forces, they went straight over to Fallujah. And so I, at the time, hated that, because all my buddies that I went to, through the Crucible with and through boot camp with went straight over, did God's work that we were wanting to do, and I didn't. But the other side of me thinks about like how much time and training I got before I finally ended up, over there when it mattered, and I was way better then than I would have been here. So cup half full, cup half empty.
Yeah.
But I do get the sentiment, because if you'd have missed that deployment, your life would be different. Those kind of things change the trajectory of people's lives, either for the better or for the worse, but definitely change you forever. So yeah, I get that for sure. Now, two younger brothers, pro baseball. Now,
older.
Older, I'm sorry. Did they end up succeeding, going to school, playing ball and stuff like that?
No, my oldest brother, he played in the minors for a bit.
Okay.
And then my middle brother, he played in college, but none of them made it to the big leagues, unfortunately.
Gotcha.
And they ended up having to go into different, because I mean, it's like at that point, and I empathize with them, because it's like, for me, it's like it's always been military. Obviously I honed in on the Marine Corps once they got into the young Marine program, but
sure,
like for them, it was like, hey, I'm going to be a Major League Baseball player, like just like my father. Mm-hmm. It's like they get to that point, and then that doesn't happen.
Then
and
what?
It's like, oh shit, now what?
Mm-hmm.
So,
especially if they were attaching their identity in some sort of way that way.
Right.
It's like that. Yeah. Pro sports. I had a NFL tailback on, Dom Williams, not long ago, but pro athletes experience a lot of the same purposelessness that people from our world and our community experience when they get out. Thing is, like, if you're a tailback and you were a tailback probably all the way since Pee Wee football, that is your identity. That is who you are, that football. Yeah. And then boom, you get cut or you get hurt or you get something and you're not playing football anymore, and you might be 25 at that point. It might have been 20 years of your life, just like in our cases. The day that you sign that, that retirement and you get out, you feel it. And you could have fulfilled everything that you wanted to fulfill in the Marine Corps, but you feel that almost like a void. And it's like, what is that? A lot of people struggle, like, why do I feel this way? And I tell on my channel, I speak a lot about purpose, and it's the first time, if you came in as an adult, as an 18-year-old kid, 28 might be the first time ever in your life, at least in your adult life, that you're not serving a purpose higher than yourself. And then what? And it's kind of the same with the football players. They had a team the entire career. It wasn't wrestling or boxing. And no, they had people relying on them for a paycheck and for, school and money and, to get looks by pros. And so you have this team the entire time, and then boom, you tear your ACL, you're out, boom, now you're off the team, and now you're sitting at home with nobody thinking, you know what I mean? So I think they go through a lot of that same thing because of that identity, fixation.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
So
right on. So 2001, you're enlisted, and you said you go to 1-4 first, right?
Yeah. So, obviously 9/11 happened towards the end of my senior year in high school. And, once that happened, I was like, holy fuck. And I watched it live on TV. I was getting ready to go to school, watched the second plane hit the tower. And like, again, I just signed a contract like the month prior. And it's like, dude, this is fucking divine intervention. This is like what I'm.
Is that what you felt? That's what I was going to ask next, is what is the sensation when you're not at wartime, you enlist, and then a couple weeks later, you ain't even get a boot camp yet, and now your country's at war. Yeah, yeah.
Well, 100%. And like the emotions of like, hey, we were just attacked, right? Like I'm watching this, and like I'm feeling the feelings that I know people had when they listened to, President Roosevelt talk about Pearl Harbor, and I'm watching this live. I'm watching the second plane hit the towers. And then like, I still remember, and I still get goosebumps when like I see the video of like President Bush standing on a rubble with the loud hailer saying like, the people that brought these towers down,
they're going to hear from us very soon. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, I get goosebumps every time, dude. Yeah. And so like with that said, I just wanted to get to the fleet and just fucking slay bodies. I was so mad.
Fuck yeah.
And I knew it was my time. So I went to recruit training June 2002, and went to recruit training after I graduated. Went to School of Infantry West. They gave me the MOS 0331 machine gunner. So if you guys haven't figured out where I got my YouTube handle, that's my first name and then my MOS. But it was funny because I went in wanting to be an 0311 rifleman. And how they did it back then is, and it's kind of cliche. At least this is why I think they did, because it all seemed to work out that way. But it was like, if you were like an average Joe, like, Joe Smuckatelli, you were 0311 rifleman, right?
Yeah.
If you were a big jack dude, 0331 machine gunner. If you were an average guy, but you had a little bit higher intelligence, you became an 0351 assault.
That's right.
Right. And then if you were just a lazy, like, I don't want to say shitbag, but
Mortarman.
If you were kind of like the bottom tier of like, the infantry pool, they kind of put you in the mortar section. And I don't get me wrong, I love mortarmen to death, man.
Oh, me too.
That's how it all kind of worked out.
You know what's crazy is after going through as myself, and like I didn't understand. I wanted to be an 11. I had to be an 11, so they couldn't pull me because I had a security force contract. But I always felt like the buffer, or like the buffer dudes were going to machine guns, and then I get there and I find out like there is a thing. They check scores, and the more intelligent kids go to guns and tubes and assault and small, or whatever they're calling that now. I don't know if they're firing a Carl Gustav or what they're firing, but it like they do take like, so when I get a crop of Marines, I get the 11s, but if my 11s are buff or smart, they take them from me. Like all the ones that you were like, oh fuck yeah, this kid's gonna perform, he ends up being intelligent or strong, and they take him upstairs to the different weapon sections. But I mean, it works, right? So
well, I mean, yeah, and there's a reason of the madness, right? Like your machine gunners, they gotta be strong guys, because they gotta hump 240s, 50 cal receivers, Mark 19s. Like these motherfuckers gotta be tough.
Oh yeah.
Like when you go on, company or battalion humps, like they're carrying this stuff.
Yep.
So,
yep,
and
absolutely.
it's like I laugh when I watch like YouTube videos and like the dude's got like 3 magazines on their chest and like, this is what I'm carrying, blah blah blah. Like in combat, dude, you don't just have your gear.
Oh, everybody's gear.
Fucking yes. You got a mortar round in your pack. You got a bandolier, 7.62, 100 rounds.
Oh yeah.
You got fucking this, that, and the other. Radio batteries.
Absolutely, and it's like mission dictates, right? Like if you're rolling in trucks and you have trucks or tracks, your weight is going to be far less. But like in my situation, we went in birds, so we had, like you're saying, mortar fibers, we had small rockets, we had claymores, a bunch of frags, everything. And then I think it's funny, I'm removed a little bit, but I was cleaning out my garage and I found my old war chest with all my stuff in it, and I like pull my kit out, put my I don't have Marine Corps plates, but I put my plates in there, and I started feeling that thing. I'm like, God, that feels heavy. And I put it on, I'm like, oh God, that feels heavy. And when I was younger and when I was deploying, you got 8 mags fully topped off, which is some weight. You got claymores, you got so when you going out, like I think people underestimate how heavy Marines in general, doesn't matter what your MOS is, ground unit Marines are heavy. They're moving heavy. And I think we got away from it a little bit once we got in zone. Like we got the lighter plate carriers and drop some stuff with that old Frisbee and that old big gear, but it's definitely deceiving how heavy all that stuff can be, at least back then. And I know you guys had it kind of the same way, didn't you guys? You guys were wearing interceptors, right, when you guys pushed? Yeah. And big, huge E-Sappies, that's not heavy and it's not fun to wear, not comfortable. Yeah. Wild. All right. Well, let's move on. So, boot camp. Now, I ask this. Yeah, is there anything that stands out from boot camp that shocked you, or that was awe, or that, you know, like stands out away from the rest of it?
You know, if I really sat and thought about it, yeah, there definitely I could come up with stuff. But I remember, so it's like you got three primary drill instructors. We ended up getting like a fourth one later. I don't know if he was like just a new drill instructor that was just kind of shadowing or whatever, but
Sure.
we had one guy that was a Gulf War veteran.
Oh, wow.
And like it was funny because like he had a fucking salad bowl on his chest, right? And the other drill instructors, you know, they just had a few ribbons, which was normal back then. But you know, so you looked at that the Gulf War Marine who was a grunt. He was with LAR, and he would like sit the platoon down and like fucking tell stories. And I remember him talking to us one time. He's like, you know, you will develop a hatred for your enemy that will last your entire life. And I just remember that, you know, and that's always like kind of stuck with me. So that was just one thing I took from recruit training. So
yeah, that's wild. It seems to me that, well, I won't even say that. I like asking boot camp questions. It's funny to me how the answers work. It's seemingly the guys who, let's put it this way. I've never had a ground combat guy say that something huge stood out to them. Stuff like that I've heard, but like boot camp stories, let's call them, right? Ground combat guys don't have those, and I think it's because it doesn't even compare to the rest of their story as far as even like SOI. That's a different level, and then the fleet, which is a completely different level, right? Whereas some of the non-combat MOSs, sometimes boot camp would be like a favored tale of theirs, and they'll have stories like that. So I always just kind of try to dabble and see if anybody has it, but. Boot camp SOI 1-4. Talk to me about checking into 1-4 and the experience that you went through there.
Yeah, so for people that don't know, and like when you go to like SOI at the West Coast, it's at Camp Pendleton. So they're dividing us up. You know, you're getting assigned which unit you're going, and they told me Victor 1-4, which is right down the street. So essentially, they were dividing us up in half. Like half of us were going to 1-4. And the other half we're going to 1-7. 1-7's at 29 Palms. And so those of us that are going 1-4, it's literally right down the street.
Yeah.
It's like 3 miles down Barcelona Road.
Oh, yeah.
Is where Camp Horno is, and that's where 1st Marine Regiment is.
Yep. So
I was super ecstatic because this is where I was going to be stationed, right? This is where I'm going to spend the remainder of my Marine Corps, enlistment. And it was kind of where I was originally from.
Yep.
I was, like I said, I was born and raised in Southern California. I was living in Yorba Linda before I moved to Texas with my parents, and so it's funny because it's like I'm going to be stationed here at Pendleton. I'm in driving distance of where I used to live. Like all my old friends that I left, I'm going to now be able to hang out with them again. You know, because they're all, either getting out of high school or some of my friends were a little bit younger, so they were still in school. So
sure, yeah.
So I was excited about that. But a bus comes, we're in our service alphas, and you got your fucking sea bag and your camouflage garment bag. We get on the buses, man. They drive us down the street, and we get off the buses. We're in formation with all our shit, and freaking NCO walks up, picks us up, takes us down to different places, start checking in, and this was right before I think I want to say Thanksgiving '96. So most of the battalion was gone. It was just like a skeleton crew there, right? Yep. So when they took me to my barracks room, I got in there and like I was roomed with another Lance Corporal, but he wasn't there. Like his shit was in the room, but he wasn't there.
Right.
And I was gonna leave. We were gonna get the 96 also. So I like pretty much put my stuff down, got my civvies, and then I left. I jumped on the fucking 395 Shane train to Oceanside, and then got on train and went up to Fullerton and linked up with my old crew for the weekend. But I come back, come to find out that this Lance Corporal is he's going to be my freaking squad leader.
Oh,
And
goody.
yeah. And I didn't know anything at the time about like boot and senior Marine mentality.
Oh yeah.
Completely, they don't teach that shit in SOI. So, uh, yeah. So, I come in with the expectation of like, hey man, what's up? How you doing? I'm Brent, and it
Oh
was not
boy.
like that at all. Not like that at all. Fucking
I
standing
was
at
gonna
parade
say.
rest. Yeah, standing at parade rest for somebody that is a
Oh
lance
yeah.
corporal.
Oh yeah.
You learned what a senior Marine was, so that was a thing. So that none of that shit's taught in recruit training or school of infantry or anything like that. So,
No, I find that funny that it's the first time is that shock and awe of, oh
yeah,
my God. And maybe that's
it's
the right way too. Maybe that's by design.
it's almost like Black Friday for recruit training, right? It's like you're not expecting it or you don't know, and then especially back then when there wasn't like YouTube
Yeah,
to see
yeah.
videos of what recruit training is like. But yeah, it was a wake up call, man. It was a
Oh
wake up
yeah.
call for sure.
Oh yeah. That's what I try to get out of people is like it's a culture shock. You're from whatever culture you're from, and when you get to River Road or you get out to Horno or you get out to the stumps, man, your life is different now immediately. Yeah, yeah.
Yep.
And I think I would say that I think it's a fact that or you're a little bit in before me by a couple of years, so your guys had it worse than the guys have it now for sure. But I think that's right. A lot of the hazing stuff that was going around was unnecessary and not good for, in my opinion, not good for unit camaraderie or unit cohesion. And you have a lot of, I've talked to too many guys who were fucking heroes, dude. Silver Star recipients that were treated like absolute horse shit because they were a boot to somebody.
Oh yeah.
And it seems to me that a lot of that's been cleaned up, even since I've gotten out. I don't think you want to take the culture away, and there should still be that savage culture to it. But hurting people or, dishonoring somebody, these are still human beings. And, like I knew that coming in. So the Marine Corps did something. And sometimes it's just bad leadership, right, that lets things slide. But I think it's right. I think it should be more of a family aspect. At least that's what I tried to build with my squads and such, was that family aspect, that because that kid that you're hazing the fuck out of and demoralizing and dehumanizing every day might be the guy that has to drag you out of a house. So there should be some sort of, common human respect, amongst people.
100%. And like that will actually lead into my first deployment.
Let's go.
Exactly what you're talking about. So yeah, the environment was absolutely, we absolutely got hazed. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. We did all kinds of stupid shit, and it absolutely builds resentment.
Yeah.
And
Now, did you have a full workup before you deployed with these cats, or no?
yeah, well, yes and no. So I checked into 1-4, and it was again, it was November, and then I think I was at Horno for maybe a month before I found myself on ship. So
Okay.
no, we didn't. None of us new joins got a workup.
Gotcha.
So we got on ship, and like I literally got more training on ship than I got in SOI.
Okay.
So it's like every single day we were waking up, we were PTing on the flight deck of an LPD, rolling right into, EPW handling classes, fucking first aid type shit, doing, shooting off the back of the deck, stuff like that.
Sure.
We did everything we could on that ship going over there, because it was essentially a straight shot from San Diego all the way to Kuwait, to get us in theater and ready for the Iraq push.
Now, tell me timeline from the time you checked into 1-4 to the time you're on the ship.
So I remember checking in, and then they needed some guys for camp guard. Every camp's got like a little guard force. So I got stuck over a camp guard for maybe a few weeks. I remember being on there doing that. And all that is like picture Marines that are armed, that are always at the camp,
Mm-hmm.
able to respond to crises, right? So like I
Mm-hmm.
remember we'd have posts at like the motor pool and stuff like that, and I remember being on camp guard for maybe a month or so,
Okay.
and then they pulled us, and then we were on ship.
Instantly.
Yeah,
So it's like you got your SIF issue, you got your weapon cards, and then boom, you're down to the ship, and then it's float and train until you get there.
Pretty much.
So
I remember, like when I think back of like training prior to the invasion,
mm-hmm.
the only thing that really, and again, I might be forgetting stuff because this was a long time ago, but I remember BZOing at Horno, and like I don't remember really doing much training prior to getting on the ship and going.
Okay.
Because the timeline was just so quick.
Crunched, yeah.
So it may have been a little bit over a month before we were jumping on ship and taking off.
Now, did you get any pre-deployment leave, or were you so close from graduation to coming over to Camp Guard that you didn't get any leave before?
I believe I had some pre-deployment leave because I remember my best friend from high school. I went over to his parents' house, and like his father cooked the biggest steaks I've ever seen in my life, and they were just amazing. So
yeah.
I absolutely got some pre-deployment leave before that, but I probably didn't have much built up because again,
that's what I was going to ask. You're brand new.
Yeah,
but it helps that you're only 2 hours out from, or was it less than that from your old crew?
Yeah. I mean, are you talking about like my old friends and stuff?
Yeah. Is that where you would have took leave, or would you have took leave?
No, I would have went back to Texas.
Oh, okay,
sure.
okay, I got you. So, yeah, we're the family.
Yeah, let me just say, like, I love Texas. Like, I went to high school in Texas. Like, not everybody that fought and died in the Alamo was from Texas originally, right?
Right.
Like, I consider myself a Texan before anything. I enlisted out of Texas, went to high school in Texas, and I think if you play high school football in Texas, like that makes you a Texas citizen.
You're a Texan now, forever.
100%.
Yeah, they say if you're not sure if somebody's from Texas or not, just sit there and wait a little bit, and they'll tell you.
Dude, I'll tell you, if the patriotism in this country loved America as much as Texans love Texas, we'd be a much better country.
And that may be a fact. There's an all-time low patriotism and nationalistic pride in our country right now, which is sickening. I put something on my social media the other day, and we don't have to go there if you don't want to, but it irritates me because when you sign an oath to your country, all the way up to and including your life, you say, I will defend this country from all enemies, foreign and domestic. And nobody ever tells you what a domestic enemy is. What is the definition of a domestic enemy? Nobody can tell me. But we have American citizen students chanting death to America right now every single day on college campuses. That to me seems like an enemy of America. It seems like a domestic enemy, and I don't know where freedom of speech and becoming a labeled domestic terrorist or domestic enemy, I'm sure that line is blurred, and I'm never about taking Americans' rights away for anything. I don't like it. But is it protected when you chant death to America? And you're breaking the law in doing that and doing it in a violent manner and praising a bona fide terror outfit, by the United States. So those things are very strange to me, especially as a Marine looking at it, because it's like nobody ever tells you what that is. Well, yeah, I'll defend it, foreign and domestic. Well, what does that mean, though? Who's going to tell me what a domestic enemy is? So I've been boggling that around in my mind a little bit as I'm watching this buffoonery take place. It's an interesting question. We don't have to go there. We'll move on. If we couldn't go there, it would take too long. Nobody would have an answer. But so moving on, you have a short period of time. You have your pre-deployment leave, short period of time there. You get on the ship, and most of your training, well, sounds like all of your training is going to take place there. And that ranges from detainee interdiction to you guys, I would assume you shot on the way over and got like at least a combat zero.
Yeah, we would shoot off. So you can actually shoot off the back of the deck, the flight deck.
Sure.
And what that looks like is they just put up targets on the back side of the ship. and then you can do everything. You can BZO. So we zeroed our machine guns. We fought or shot the machine gun BZO targets, and we did just makeshift shoots where we'd be shooting and the 11s would be right next to us.
Sure.
Simulating fucking support by fires and stuff like that. So again, like we did anything and everything you could do on a ship. I mean, to put it in perspective, guys, like going to war, invading a country, like that's, as a Marine infantryman, like that's playing in the Super Bowl. So if you were going to play in the Super Bowl, and you're on a ship, how are you going to train for the Super Bowl on a ship? Well, you're going to fucking do everything you can, right? You're going to run, you're going to throw footballs, you're going to do everything you can to prepare for that game. And that's what we were doing.
For sure.
So,
what about, well, this goes back a little bit, but you as a machine gunner, fall into a machine gun team in section. What were you carrying as a sidearm? Do you have a rifle? Did you have a pistol?
So my billet kind of changed. They kept kind of switching up the teams and the squads. Again, everybody was so new that they were kind of trying to figure out where people fit the best. Right?
Sure.
And it's important to note too, like with our battalion, we actually had an ADVON, and there were machine gunners that were part of our machine gun section that were already in country.
Yep.
A good portion of them, probably about almost half the section, and we hadn't even met. So like going over there, I was acting as a boot, as a machine gun team leader. But once I got in country and we absorbed these other guys, they rearranged everything, and then I became, a gunner in a machine gun team. But so as a team leader, you would have like an M16A2, you would carry the tripod, and your actual gunner would have the M240 Golf medium machine gun at the time, and then you'd have an M9 service pistol.
Yeah. Okay.
And then you have an ammo man. Ammo man had the we called it a flex mount. It was it's a pintle, and it's a little cradle that the 240 went into, and then it had the T&E attached to that.
Yep.
240 Bravos nowadays look nothing like in terms of like how they connect to the tripod.
Yeah.
All that's been kind of streamlined, but
yeah, and then the gas tube. I had Golfs as well, I operated with both of them. In FAST, we cross-trained on them in 2004 or 5. I don't know if they still do. I imagine they still do. Just a little note. I am not a machine gunner. The 240 is amongst my favorite weapons in the Marine Corps, hands down. Well, like at least for a ground guy that's moving.
It is absolute fantastic machine gun.
Yeah.
Absolutely fantastic. And it's older than like the M60 that it replaced. When you really look back at the FN mag and like when it first came into service, the FN mag was slaying bodies back in, the Rhodesian conflict and, in other places. The British were using it. The Israelis were using it. Everybody was using the FN mag other than us. Right. So. Yeah,
it's terrifying. It's terrifying to get shot at by, which I wouldn't say I got shot at by it, but I was, let's say we were E&ing from an area where we were in a pretty hell of a gunfight, and we had a machine gun team elevated probably like 20 feet off the ground on a building, and there's this long vineyard wall, and we just put some dudes down back behind that wall that were, harassing and kind of pursuing us all day. But the command didn't want us over there. And we told them, roger that, we'll hold. Well, then we didn't. We went over there, and then they got ISR. And they're like, hey, we're pushing you guys ISR to get an eye on these people. And it's like, shit, we got to get on the other side of this orchard now. So we're hauling ass back, down that line towards our machine gun. And some dudes came out from behind that wall, and they started ripping. And for a second, you just think you showed up at Valhalla, like, I'm dead, you see that burst come and that, that's just it's got the tone, man. I love that gun. And it's always comforting to me when you got a 240 enemy or a friendly 240 going off in the distance. It's like, yeah, I'll go over there. Yeah. I'll go over there right now. I love that warm and fuzzy feeling of a 240. Anyway, sorry, I digress.
No, you're all right, man.
So you get over there, you absorb these other guys that are part of your section that you hadn't even met before. And I'm sure that's, talk to me about what that's like once you finally meet the element that you're working with.
Yeah, so we flew the day we were going in country. We're in some port in Kuwait, and we boarded. Where they put us in sticks. We boarded CH-46, which you guys don't know what 46s are. The Marine Corps doesn't use them anymore. They
Big
picture
boys.
like a Chinook helicopter, but like shrunk down into like a quarter of that size, and that's what a 46 looks like. So we got on the 46. They flew us out to these just remote, isolated camps out in the middle of freaking nowhere. Literally, it was just the fucking engineers took bulldozers and made just big dirt walls
Yep.
and just made these bases out in the middle of nowhere, and built them into big like staging areas, big forward operating bases for troops. And I mean, these were super primitive. They had big troop tents. They were not like military issued tents. They were probably Kuwaiti civilian acquired. Like they were made of like canvas.
Yeah.
And just everything. Like we had to wash our clothes in ammo cans.
Yep.
It's just very, very like expeditionary. Nothing was, set up in a manner of like being permanent, like you would see, later on in like Iraq, operations and Afghanistan operations. This was all just like stuff that just got built overnight. So we were living in these tents. I do remember we did have porta-shitters, so we didn't have to dig.
Well, that's good.
Yeah.
That deteriorated somewhere. Turned to piss tubes and burning shit and diesel fuel.
Yeah.
Fun times.
If you guys actually watch Generation Kill, they actually do a pretty good job of replicating what that looked like.
And that's 1-4, isn't it?
So no.
Oh, okay.
It's their recon element, but they were with us. They were like the advanced party that was kind of leading the way. And there's actually one of the episodes they're occupying some building, and like some Marine walks in, he's like, "This building is claimed by 1st Battalion, 4th Marines." So, like you see that in the show, which is pretty funny.
Yeah, no, I love that show actually. Well, I guess it's a series, right? It's multiple. I felt like as a Marine that had deployed to Iraq, then I watched it, and as I'm watching it, I'm like, dude, they fucking nailed this. Just I think the little tiny accents of gruntism was just enough, kind of like specifically a portion of that resonated with me the most was the Lance Corporal driver. He's been the driver the whole time. They've been eating shit the whole time, and his attitude, it was like they pulled a Marine to play that part, like a Marine that's exactly what he, like whoever the actor is, or if it was a Marine, I don't know, but it did exactly what it was supposed to, from the mentality to the psychology to having a big dip in your mouth and just spitting on yourself because it doesn't fucking matter. That kind of stuff that they flaked into that series was perfect, because that's exactly what it's like.
Right.
Yeah.
I think, cool. What's funny is, what was it, last year? Is it last year or the year before? Was the very first time that I had actually sat down and watched that series from start to finish. Before then, I had just seen some snippets on YouTube, and I don't know why it took me so long to watch that. I don't want to play like a PTSD card on that. I've been more interested in other wars, like not my war. And it took me a long time to watch this show, but I finally watched it from start to finish, and I agree, man. I think they did a fantastic job putting that together. The only thing that kind of rubbed me the wrong way was just the portrayal of like staff NCOs and officers in the unit, right? Because it's like you're talking recon, right? So it's like, it's not even a regular infantry, it's recon. It's you're going to have a little bit more squared away guys doing recon, and yet they kind of took the staff NCO and officer incompetence betrayal in that series, in my opinion.
I'd have to watch it again, to be honest, because it's not jogging me. But I will. I definitely watch it again and see how that goes. Whose perspective was it told from, though?
It's the guy that plays the sergeant. I think he's the one that. Well, no. The reporter is the one that wrote the book.
Okay. Because why I'm asking is that whatever perception or perspective that story's being told from is likely why it's like that. So if it was an outside entity maybe that didn't understand everything, there could be that. I don't know. I'm just trying to spitball it here.
My suspicion is, our world, our military world, like they have to exaggerate stuff like that to make it click with civilians that aren't in that culture, right? So it's like, yeah, there is levels of incompetence. What I'm saying is just like the staff and CO and officer, some of the betrayals in that were just dying to the left, man.
Yeah.
Like their sergeant major is just constantly, fucking reaming them about mustaches, and
your mustache.
Yeah. So, and I'm not saying.
I was gonna say that's every unit I've ever been in.
Yeah. Obviously, that kind of stuff happens, but they in order to like really hammer home that point to like
they exaggerate it.
Yeah, they exaggerate it. Like,
I gotcha.
I
don't know. I wrote in my book, Lions of Marja, I talk about the Marja campaign, and one of the things I talked about when I was there is just kind of not a betrayal, but a little the isms, right? Is about cold weather gear. We were in like Kyrgyzstan or wherever it was we landed first, and it's snowing. And, our entire company is like in a warming circle because all of our cold weather gears, well, first of all, you're not allowed to wear it unless it's okayed or deemed, ominous dominus by the command. But secondly, we have all our stuff packed. And when we left where we left, it wasn't this cold kind of thing. So we're all standing out there like huddled up like cows in a warming circle. And our first sergeant Petrakis, shout out, he walks out and he's got his beanie on and his OR gloves and everybody just kind of looks at him like you motherfucker, right? And I want to say he threw his hands in his pockets. He's like, "What? We're on the push now. Make yourselves comfortable." And dude, you didn't even know that it was there. There were sweatshirts coming out of cargo pockets. There was gloves. There was gaiters. And but it's funny because up until that point, it was very much like that. Like that. You will be uniformed. You will not wear a beanie from this time. You will not trim your mustache. Like all of that's a thing. Your hair's too long. Yeah. And I see where they exaggerate. I see what you're saying there. And maybe they do it. Maybe they did a little bit too much. I have to watch again.
But so like, and there's just things that won't click with civilians, right? So it's like they really emphasize, hey, the grooming standard in that show, right? And they're trying to make it like, hey, it's being over top. We're about to go to war, and they're concentrating on little minute things like that.
Sure.
But what they're not trying to convey is like, hey, the 2003 Iraq invasion, like the question was,
gas.
When are we going to get hit with gas? Not if, right? And you have to have a clean shaven face to make sure that you get a proper seal on the gas mask.
Sure.
So it's like that's why the grooming standard was so fucking enforced. But like average Joe Blow citizens not thinking about that.
No,
and they're not going to waste precious time in a HBO miniseries to like explain that. So
yeah. No, I get it.
Yeah.
I get it. I hated gas masks. I fucking hated them. I hated them.
Dude.
I didn't even mind the gas chamber. Like I did okay with all of that. Of course, that would kill you after so much exposure, sure, but like I just hated wearing them. And we trained them. We trained shooting them because it's hard. If you've never trained shooting with a gas mask on, it's different slice of cake. You could be the best shooter without one, but you put that on, it changes. So I hate that.
Iron sights.
Yeah.
We had M16A2s, baby.
Yeah,
iron sights, baby. You're
red dot's not so bad. You get like you get an EOTech on there with a red dot. Oh, dude, you can shoot easy with them. But when you're trying to get sight picture and sight alignment and proper, dude, that doesn't work well.
So what else sucked about the gas mask is like my gas mask insert. So I had glasses back then, and my gas mask inserts didn't come in time.
Oh,
so
boy.
Literally, if I had to don and clear my gas mask, which was frequent during the invasion, I couldn't I was nearsighted. I couldn't see far. So it's
man.
like, if I took contact, dude, I was like,
accuracy by volume in that section over there.
Pretty much. I mean, thank God I was a machine gunner, right? And I got a team leader that could walk me on target.
Yeah.
That sucked, dude. That was nerve wracking.
Oh man, I can't imagine. I never had to do it in country. I never even had to practice it in country, thank God. Did a lot outside, when training and stuff, but never had to do it. Okay, so talk to me. Sorry, we keep getting off track, and there's no real track, so we just turn right here. I want to know, like, the general sensation and emotions of being in Kuwait, and now we know we're about to go across the LOD, and we're like, nobody's ever done this before. You don't have any combat veterans, I would assume, that were leading you, right?
We had some Gulf War guys that were our senior staff NCOs. So
Okay.
company gunnery sergeant back then was gunnery sergeant Morales. He was a Desert Storm veteran infantry guy. He was an assaultman. I think he was a dragon gunner.
Okay.
They had dragons before javelins. So he was combat experienced, and there was a couple other staff NCOs I think saw action in Desert Storm. But outside of that, like, no, there were none.
Right.
Our company first sergeant was I think he was an Arty guy at the time, first sergeant Archibald, but he was combat experience from Desert Storm. So like we had some combat experience staff NCOs, but outside of that, like no. But and let me just say this, like NCOs, we didn't have many.
Right.
It was like most of the squad leaders were Lance Corporals.
Yeah.
I mean, it was like that. Team leaders were virtually all Lance Corporals.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
if you had a corporal, he was a squad leader. And
it stayed like that for how long? It stayed like that all the way through 2006-07 time frame, probably. I took my first squad over as a Lance Corporal. I was shortly promoted to corporal after, but the fleet was drained of leadership for grip.
Yeah. And I will say this, like we were terribly short on NCOs, but they plussed us up with bodies.
Yeah.
It was the only time in my Marine Corps career where I've ever seen a TO machine gun section.
Yeah, right. Yeah, so at least you had somebody.
Yeah.
So what was the general emotion then amongst, like, walk me through like an evening before we lay down prior to pushing?
So we did a lot of training on the desert as much as we could. Believe it or not, for those people who haven't been out there, like there's still plenty of like tank hulks and stuff from Desert Storm out there. Mm-hmm. Old Iraqi destroyed armor. So there would just be like random, Iraqi freaking T-72s like blowing up out there. And we would go out there and we'd shoot at them. Mm-hmm. We'd do machine gun ranges. Levins would do fire team attack ranges. Platoon attack ranges. I remember doing some support by fires for platoon size helmets, closing width, and so we just go out to the open desert and set up just ranges out in the middle of fucking nowhere and train, man. Yeah. We would do NBC training, putting on the mop suits and everything like that, because we knew that's what it was gonna be, and just everybody know, like, we didn't know if the invasion was gonna happen or like, and I can only speak for myself, but I'm sure everybody kind of held the same sentiment. Like, we wanted to go. Like, we fucking wanted to go. Mm-hmm. Now, go back thinking about 9/11. Like, when I watched that, like, I wanted nothing more than to lay waste to any and anybody that opposed America. Mm-hmm. So I already see the keyboards clicking. What did Iraq have to do with 9/11? That's not the fucking point, right? Mm. So
he needed to be dealt with at some point or another. Let's be honest. You killing your people, you're gassing your people, you're making threats to people you shouldn't make threats to, right. And we're about to go into the region anyway. Regardless of what the reports come out and say, whatever.
I'm not gonna sit here and make the case for the invasion of Iraq. Obviously, a lot more is known now than back then. But whatever the case may be, like, doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter if you're a Marine. You train, and the country says, go there and kill people. And you go there and you kill people. That's what the fuck you do. That's what's beautiful about the active component. And it's also what's the tragedy about the civilian component, is that is what we are here for. Sure, that's what we're doing. That we train for it, we sleep it, we eat it, we breathe it, and we long for it. That's a weird thing to a lot of people. Like, got it. But there is no politics in the grunt enlisted effort. Politics isn't a thing. We don't think about politics. We don't do politics. We beg you to take the leash off and send us anywhere that you feel we need to be sent. And that's it. Right. It makes it that easy. To go back to your boot camp mentor quote, to say that your enemy is forever, that's probably... I would say that I hope that a lot of us, as we age and get older, can understand the psychological aspects of those people being where they are, created where they are, the limits to what their future can hold and such. But it is a hard thing. I mean, when your adult life from 18 to however long you're in, you have that as an enemy, you're going to think about that as an enemy, regardless of where that is and if that is an enemy. In the back of your head, I would imagine. I think a lot of guys can get stuck there. I'm glad that I'm not a person that got stuck there. I think I've seen the difference primarily in my interpreters along the way. These people are from this area. They want this area back. They want it to be good. And they're fighting for our side. And they're Muslim. So it's not all of them, right? It's not, they all can't be my enemy. But differentiating that can be difficult. I mean, we're seeing that now across the United States on these campuses. It's like, where did this come from? Who are these people? It's interesting. Very interesting. Okay, so talk to me about this. When did you get word from the command that, like, it's fucking on, we're going? And what was that like?
I was actually I was on post. So again, these big camps that we were at, they had positions out on the perimeter.
Mm-hmm.
So I was on a post, machine gun post, out there with another Marine. My sergeant, name was Sergeant Ward, just comes up and he steps in and he goes, well, fucking boys. He's like, this shit's going down. He's like, the president just gave Saddam and his sons 48 hours to leave the country because we're going in. He's like, get your fucking shit ready to rock and roll.
Give me cold chills hearing it.
Dude,
yes.
You want to talk about, like, dick hard? Like, see, I mean, up to this point, it's like we didn't know if we were going, and
Sure.
Now we just got the word, like, this shit's happening, and it's going to happen in the next, couple days.
Tie your boots, boys. Yeah.
Yeah, dude. So, I mean, so you can just think of the emotions, like, holy shit, we're about to fucking do this. And, I mean, we were stepping off into the unknown. Like, we didn't know what we were going up against. Like, the Iraqi army, like, we had little red books, and I still have it, actually, but it has information about the Iraqi army. But, like, you look at Desert Storm, like, Iraq was, I think, the 4th or 5th largest army in the world at that time during Desert Storm. And, like, I don't know what it is at this point, but it's still going to be a large force, and they're on the defensive, right? We're going into their country. So it's like, how are the people going to receive us? How long has the enemy been preparing? Like, they've had their whole lifetime to prepare for our invasion. So, all this stuff's going on. Plus, to think of the fact that I'm fucking 19 years old at this point. I'm a boot Marine, like freaking Lance Corporal. Like, no experience other than recruit training, School of Infantry, and like the month
float
and a half, on a ship, and training out in the desert before this is kicking off. So, but to say all that, to say, like, hey, September 11th, 2001 and March of 2003 aren't that far apart, right? And the anger from September 11th is still there.
Oh yeah.
And at that point, I was ready to take on any and everyone that even remotely had anything to do with that. So.
Yeah. Yep. Okay. So you go across the LOD. Let's walk through it.
So our CO, well, let me backtrack. So once that word got passed, that's when, like, mop suits, like brand new mop suits, like in the packaging and everything, started getting handed out. Fucking ammo's getting handed out, man. We're jamming our magazines, full. We're getting combat loads, stuff that we hadn't seen other than an SOI, like M67 fragmentation grenades, pop-ups. Dudes are getting fucking 40 Mike for their 203s.
Oh yeah.
We're getting 7.62 linked ammunition out the ass. We're prepping ammo cans. Like, everything that you can think of, like, prepping for war is taking place right now. Like, AT4s are coming out, out of their packaging. I mean, it was amazing.
Yeah.
So we were hardening. This is another funny thing. We were hardening 7-ton trucks. We were supposed to get Amtraks, but they weren't arriving in time or something. So we were starting to make these, like, wood box cradles, and we were filling up sandbags and hardening these trucks because we're going to have to go in the push.
Sure.
Like, to quote Donald Rumsfeld, you go to war with the gear you have, not the gear you wish you had.
Yeah.
So we're hardening these 7-ton trucks. Well, I think we pretty much just finished hardening these trucks, and then all of a sudden I see this long column in the distance, and it's tracks, right? And the very lead track had a fucking massive Texas flag on it. And I was like,
fuck yeah.
Yeah. These are trackers from Texas, boy.
Yeah.
And they got there, dude. They were reserve trackers from Texas. I think they're out of Galveston. So fourth tracks.
Okay.
And they showed up just in time. So now we got AAVs. You know, we're stoked.
Yeah.
We were a track company to begin with. So we're stoked we're getting these AAVs, and like in my opinion, it's like, man, if I'm going to war, I want to be in an armored personnel carrier, not a freaking truck.
Yeah. Yeah.
So now we're loading all the ammo onto the tracks. These things are getting jam packed, and they were so packed with ammunition and chow and water and everything that literally, for those that don't know, like on AAVs, they got 2 hatches, and you'd have to open up the hatches and do the stand up. And that's called being on air watch. We would have to have guys on air watch in order to fit everybody inside the vehicle. But the problem with that is, the problem with that is when Saddam launched his Scuds, like you had to assume that those were, had chemical weapons, and everybody would have to get in the track, and we'd have to batten the hatches and go Mach 4. Oh. So, I mean, just dudes piled up on top of each other, guys, nut sacks in your face.
That's what I was going to say. How's getting into Mach 4 inside a track with a whole section?
Brutal. Yeah. Absolutely fucking brutal, man. It's just.
And how long do you have to stay in it? At the time, what was the SOP? You mop up, and then how long before you can clear?
I don't remember exactly like the actual time distance, but like they would wait for like the Scud to hit, and then a certain time elapsed, and then here's the best part: they had this thing called selective unmasking. And what that is is we're all batting down inside the AVs, Mach 4, and eventually staff and CO platoon sergeant would come by and he'd be like, "Hey, fucking PFC Smoke Telly, come here, man. Hey, how you doing, bud? You doing all right? Hey, here, let me see your rifle. I'm gonna inspect it real quick." Freaking PFC hands the platoon sergeant's rifle, and he's like looking at his rifle. He's like, "Oh, okay." He's like, "Hey, man, we gotta do selective unmasking. So what I need you to do is go and take your gas mask.
Go ahead and suck in some nice air and let me know how it goes." Oh yeah.
So that PFC would fucking, take his mask off. Now here's the good part. Me as a machine gunner, we're not a dime a dozen, right?
You were safe from that.
We were safe from that, dude. They're gonna take fucking, PFC Smuckatelli rifleman 0311 because there's plenty of you to spare.
You're expendable. Yeah. That's funny.
But yeah, can you imagine being that prime first class that's told like, "Hey man, we need you to take your gas mask off so we can determine it's safe, so nobody else will die."
The Hunger Games is upon you. Yeah.
So,
well, it has to happen though, and it's written that way too. Like that's the way. I never had to be that PFC. Sucks for the guys that did. I think they have way better gear now though, so that's good as far as gas masks and stuff. Still sucks to be that first one though that have to take it off. That's desperate.
So anyways, I remember we load up in AVs. We moved to a position out in the desert, and again, as a Lance Corporal, boot Lance Corporal, like I don't know where the fuck we are. We're somewhere, right? And we're digging either skirmishers or fighting positions. Anytime we stopped, we had to dig fighting positions. And then I remember one night, and this is before like the actual invasion kicks off, but we're all in mop gear, like we're ready, we're staged, we're in our attack positions pretty much. CO, the company commander, Captain Gomez, brings in like the whole company, minus security elements, and he gives that like pre-game speech, man, and it's like, "Well, boys, this is what we've been training for." He's like, the order's been given, this is what's going to happen. This is what, as Marine infantry, like this is what we've been, are trained to do, and this is what we're going to do. We're going to take the fight to the enemy. And it's just like, dude, you're, goosebumps, dude. You're in the gear. You're in fucking, 3, just waiting for the word. And I mean, this was like the pre-fucking speech, and it was like dusk, and that was it. After that, it was like, dude, you knew it was on.
Oh yeah. Oh, yeah. Was that the night before or a couple days? What?
I think it was the night before we crossed the LOD, or it was maybe hours before, because when we crossed the LOD, I remember it was dark. It was we had, and this is gonna blow some people's mind. I had one pair of 7 Bravos for our whole machine gun team.
Oh boy.
Yeah, and somehow now I think about it, I actually got moved back to being a team leader. So I had two of my boot peers in my machine gun team. So now I'm a team leader, and we had one pair of 7 Bravos, and I had it. It was mine. So I was up on air watch, and I'm looking through the 7 Bravos, and I remember we crossed through the LOD, and I remember it was like a big breach in some dunes. We drive through, and there was like a destroyed BMP right at our side, and like you can just hear shit going on. They were blowing the fuck out of San Juan Hill, Saffron Hill, I think it's called. So they were blowing the fuck out of that while we were crossing. So I mean, you hear just aircraft, and fucking cruise missiles, all kinds of stuff going on.
So a lot of Tomahawks, I think, right, that came off of the ships for that.
Yeah. So it's like you just hear stuff. Again, it's nighttime, and I'm looking through 7 Bravos. So I can't really hear or see a lot of stuff going on, but you can hear the aircraft going on.
Sure. And your tracks take off and you guys push.
Yeah. So
how long was it before you made contact with anybody?
Several days.
Several days.
So,
okay.
When we first crossed the LOD, so like I was seeing the destroyed vehicles and whatnot when we first crossed through the breach, and then I just remember a lot of open desert in those initial days, just driving, and it's crazy, man. It's like being jammed in the back of an AEV, and you went from having a drink. You know how the Marine Corps mentality is, like we can't have 0 heat cases and 0 any type of casualties, so you will drink 1 canteen of water every hour on the water. Man, as soon as that invasion kicked off, it was you get 1 canteen a day. Like that was what you were allotted. I'm not bullshit. If anybody thinks I'm pulling her leg, like no. We dropped down to 1 canteen a day after we conditioned our bodies to drink a canteen of water every hour on the and I think back to that time frame, I'm like, what the fuck were we doing? Like, why didn't we condition our bodies to live off of that if we knew that was the case? And it's like you had a funnel, like there was a squad funnel, and you had to pour the water in the funnel. Like water was not an unlimited resource.
Sure.
So but yeah, we're in those AVs for several days, and if everybody wants to see like the actual timeline of how things went down, I did an interview with my old company first sergeant, now Sergeant Major Archibald, retired, and he actually kept a detailed journal of like day-to-day activity. So we did a couple hour interview podcast where we just went down the whole timeline. But the first contact I remember, first contact I remember was outside. It was close to Nasiriyah. I don't remember exactly how close, but it was outside of that. And all I remember hearing was, at this point I wasn't on air watch. I was inside the track. And I remember hearing contact left. The track took a hard maneuver, and then that ramp just goes, it drops. And fucking you run off there, and we ran off to the left side of the track. We got online, and I remember looking over at my buddy, and like he's looking at me and like, this is fucking it, son. This is first contact, right? Yeah. So shit's going off. Dudes are firing their rifles and stuff. I remember seeing a couple buildings, like 500 or so meters in front of me, but I didn't have a target. I couldn't identify anybody, so I didn't end up, engaging anything.
Sure. What about those main guns on the tracks? Were they engaging?
I don't know if the track. I'm sure they were. They had to.
Yeah.
So those AAV up guns, man, were fucking
nasty.
Those dudes were good, man. And for those that don't know, like that turret has a 50 cal and a Mark 19 in it.
Yeah.
So
man. That's all the sauce right there.
Oh yeah. So we were out there. There was a couple dudes engaging stuff. I remember like I think a small rocket got shot into a building.
Okay. Was it Revolutionary Guard Corps or?
I'm not sure at this point. The people that shot at us, and Sergeant Major Archibald talks about it in our interview. They had fled, and our assaultman Adam Schwarzy, he shoots a small rocket at this building, blows a fucking hole in it, and then like literally a family walks out of this building, all alive. None of them were hurt or anything, so, miraculously.
Wow.
Yeah. But what happened was some enemy took some shots from that building, and then they fled.
Gotcha.
But
and so something like that happens, you guys conduct SOP, you get out, you clear, okay, now that everything's okay, you just load back up and then keep pushing. And this was outside of Nasiriyah, and so was there, no, you guys were the first ones through there. I was just trying to think of when the Battle of the Bridges at Nasiriyah happened. When was it? I think General Tommy Franks wrote a book about it called The Battle of the Bridges. But that must have been later. So, just trying to get my timeline.
Yeah, there was. It wasn't our battalion. It was another battalion that they took. I think it was a direct hit from an Iraqi artillery piece and just completely destroyed a track. And all the Marines inside it were killed. Mm-hmm. So,
yeah, there's tough stuff with the tracks and I think tanks too at some point over in that area, getting stuck in the mud and taking some heat. So okay, so you guys push, keep walking me through it. And
yeah, so one of the biggest challenges of the invasion is just moving. We were moving constantly, and you just weren't stopping. Right? Yeah. If we stopped, it'd be at night. They would herringbone. We would dig fighting positions. Every single time we stopped, we dug fighting positions. If we didn't have time to dig like a proper Marine Corps fucking machine gun position, we dug skirmishers. What that means is like you're just pushing dirt up. You're putting some earth between you and the enemy. Yeah. But we did something. Like we weren't idle hands, man. We were always digging.
Sure.
I don't know how many freaking fighting positions I dug during the invasion, but
a bunch. It sounds like.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
The other thing was like not just the water, but chow. Yeah. We were moving so far and so fast that we dropped down to 1 MRE a day. And people will tell you that 1 MRE a day can sustain person for 24 hours. Fucking you try that, buddy. I'm telling you, when you do that for a month straight, just 1 MRE a day, like you feel like you're a freaking Ethiopian, man.
Yeah, you eat away. That's a fact.
Yeah. I
had some stipulations like that on my last one, and we ran out of food. It was less than that. It wasn't for that long of a time though. We got backfilled some food, but I mean, we were cooking rabbits and raiding their bazaars for eggs and potatoes. It got kind of rough on the whole MRE deal. Yeah. But yeah, I totally agree. When that's not enough, you got to figure it out. I don't think your regular civilian thinks about that kind of thing. And then it's not like 1 MRE deal. Oh, I could eat 1 meal a day. Well, eat 1 meal a day and then carry 60-pound load and then fight. And then know that if you've already eaten, you don't eat dinner that night. Or if you do eat dinner that night, you don't eat breakfast tomorrow or anything, right? Yeah. So there's a psychology to that'll fuck with you. But for me, and I'll ask you the same, but for me, I never wanted to be heavy when I was moving if I could afford it. So I would always wait until it was like my body said, no, like you have to eat right now. It's time to eat, or get shaky, or, whatever, need some sugar. I would try to wait for those times, at least when the operation was heavy. When it's not, and you have time, but that's a different thing. It's a way of thinking that not too many people have to, at least Western people have to even think about food and when to eat and when not to. So that adds a whole new human factor to it.
I tell you, man, like that MRE, like we ate everything in that MRE. I remember there was little packets of like creamer, and like I remember dumping the sugar into the creamer and like eating that.
Oh yeah,
because you just got so hungry.
Yeah. Hunger. If you've never been hungry, is a weird thing to encounter. I hear my kids. I even say things I probably shouldn't because it's not their fault. But they'll be like, "I'm starving." I'm like, "You're not starving. You don't know what starving is." Or, just like being impatient about when's our food going to get here? And I'm like, somebody has to kill it, and then they have to clean it, and then they have to cook it, and then it comes to you in 10 minutes. Just sit there and shut up. I don't say that, but that's what goes on in my head. It's like, not fair. Yeah. So that's another thing that you guys had to figure out. Like prior to my a couple years later, I'm only 2 years later, but the amount of logistics in food and water and fuel and cops and things that we learned just in that 24 months of going there, it was enormous, because then when I got there, it was not like that. Even in Marjo, I was first boots on deck as well, and that's different. I did deployments where I fell into cops that were established, and I had that in Iraq, which was awesome. When you don't have that and you're going in and living in amongst the people until your cops get built, that's a whole different, that's a different thing. And it's not like better or worse or tougher. It's just different. You don't have that. So, and then you establish it. Hits different completely. All right. So keep walking me through, you can wave top if you want and kind of skip through. So we don't have to stick, directly to a timeline, but the big plays that stick out to you and things that happened that you want to talk about.
Yeah, so we pushed on, and we started hitting like bigger cities like Al Nasiriyah.
Mm-hmm.
Getting closer to that's when we started getting like really intensive enemy fire, and that was kind of like the first major like urban fighting that I had ever seen. Because I remember getting to the outskirts of that city, and like everybody on Air Watch was just unloading. And it was funny because like dudes like boot Marines that were up on Air Watch, like those dudes, we would be up as new boot Marines, like you would be up on Air Watch 24/7,
mm-hmm.
right?
Like duty or post or something, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Like, and your senior Marine, your senior freaking Lance Corporal's down there on the track, just sleeping his ass off.
Yeah.
And that was sleep deprivation during the invasion was a big thing also. And so that kind of ties into the whole, what we were talking about earlier with the hazing and the, building that, animosity, because this, these young Marines that were getting mistreated, by these senior Marines, some of the senior Marines. I'm not gonna say them all, because some of them were really square away guys.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're that team leader, and here you got two junior guys underneath you, and you're making them do all the watch while you sleep, like what example is that setting?
Sure.
What bond, what relationship is that setting? I'm telling you right now, I wouldn't put it past some guys. I'll just fucking straight up say, like, I know guys that were my peers that they hated their senior Marines so much that they weren't fucking exposing themselves to enemy fire to save them.
Oh,
like
really?
That's how.
Bad.
Oh yeah. Those guys got hazed so bad that was the feelings that they had.
That's what I was talking about in the beginning. That is not what we need. Yeah.
Right. But I mean, and I know it's hard for some people to fathom this, but like the invasion was like a month straight of pushing. Mm-hmm. So like take all the stuff that happened back in the rear. Now we're in war. All the fuck games in war need to stop.
Yep.
And you didn't have some of these like senior Marines stopping. And when you do that, like you're dancing with the devil, man. Yeah. Because everybody's carrying freaking ammunition, and people's lives are on the line. Like all those little silly fuck games need to stop. And I'm telling you right now, some of them did not.
Yeah.
So anyways,
I mean, you play stupid games, you're gonna win stupid prizes. You always gotta be careful tap dancing on the devil's dick. I've said that. I said that about hazing since I came in. I don't think it was right. I never did it because I didn't believe it was productive and conducive to establishing an elite squad of warfighters. And my contention now is that it's detrimental to building what you need as a squad or as a warfighting outfit. But yeah. So did that lead to real problems?
I don't think anything ever came of that, in terms of like people getting hurt.
Right.
But it could have.
Yeah. The mentality was.
Yes. It was absolutely there with some guys for sure. But like going back to what I was talking about, like, the boot Marines were up on air watch, and it's like, I remember rolling into the outskirts of Nasiriyah and we're taking fire, right? And all of a sudden boots are getting pulled down and senior Marines are going up.
Imagine that.
And that, again, this was like, not our first contact. This is like our second or third contact. But that was significant fire. Like I could hear rounds pinging off the track,
Okay.
and stuff like that. And again, at this point, I'm still inside the track, because we had to rotate out between the junior guys. So we pushed through that, and then we start entering into the cities, and that's when like the significant fighting for me really started to take place. I hate to use the phrase like free fire zones, but like the ROEs were getting kind of loose, right?
Yeah.
So because I mean we were absolutely getting into the unknown. The enemy could be anywhere, and the civilians are trying to flee, and it was getting really hazy. If you watch Generation Kill, like you kind of, they do a great job of conveying that, like the long lines of cars and stuff that are trying to get out of there. We did everything we could to minimize civilian casualties. Considering the totality of like everything that's taken place, like we are invading this country. We're trying to kill the right people, but sometimes civilians get killed.
Sure. There'll always be collateral damage. Always.
Oh yeah. LAR, CAT, Cobras and stuff are all screening, and any vehicle that looked like it was transporting enemy troops. You got technicals and stuff like that. Like cars were getting fucked up. Yeah. And I remember being on the road, we're pushing, and it's like you're seeing just endless amounts of vehicles that are just destroyed. They have bodies in them, and I remember thinking to myself, we passed this one bus, and there's a bunch of civilians. Well, I don't know if they were civilians or enemy troops. Could be anything. But they're in the windows, man, and like they're frozen like this, just charred bodies. And fuck, dude, you want to talk about like images getting stuck in your mind? Like that was what we saw. Stuff like that, a lot of it. So
you think it was you think it was just mis-ID'd targets? What do you think?
Well, so one night I'm not sure which city we were outside of. We were in the defense, and it was a really nasty storm coming, and we were told to dig in. So we're digging in our position, and it got so like foggy and hazy that you couldn't see but more than like a few feet in front of you. It was bad. And I remember my company gunny came running up. He's the Gulf War vet, Gunner Sergeant Morales at the time. And he's got 2 armfuls of 7.62 linked ammunition, in his hands. He comes up to our hole, and he just drops all of it in our hole. And he said, "We're getting hit by an enemy fucking division tonight." He's like, "Don't leave your hole and kill anything in front of you." And he fucking turns around and runs off into the fog. And we're like looking at each other like, holy fuck. What the fuck? And I'm like trying to look through my 7 Bravos, and like you could not see through the fog with the 7 Bravos either. So, and like you could not see the position to your left, and you cannot see the position to your right. Right. So it's like if you were gonna go piss a shit, dude, you are like, taking 2 steps behind you, and you're doing it right there because you won't find your fighting position after that. So that night in the wee hours in the morning, all hell breaks loose, and I could hear tank rounds going off, freaking cats shooting toes, and you just see like through the fog, you're seeing explosions. Artie is blowing the fuck out of the city, off in the distance. Like you could just hear them. You saw like, remember Band of Brothers? Not Band of Brothers. What's the Tom Hanks movie? Saving Private Ryan.
Saving Private Ryan. Yep.
Yeah. Remember when they're walking on the horizon and you just see like it looks like thunder in the distance, but it's Artie. That's what was going on. You could hear the Artie, you could see the flashes, and then you see in the distance like the impacts or hear the impacts. That was all going on like throughout the night. So before like the heavy fog rolled in, like you could see that. So anyways, that major
That's
firefight
intense.
takes place. Oh yeah. That
So your firefight
takes
takes place with you in the defense?
Yeah, we were in the defense.
Okay.
So we're sitting in our hole. All this is going on. Again, at this point, it's tank main guns, cats shooting toes, and you can hear like LAV-25 shooting or 25 Mike, guns. So come morning time, we load up, we start pushing out, and then that's when, we're passing like buses with charred bodies and all kinds of stuff. So, what we were told was happening was they were, Iraqi army was coming up the main MSR, and our guys engaged them. So, hopefully that's what happened. I can't sit here and swear on a Bible and say that, those weren't civilians trying to flee the city. It very well may have been, but I think it was an enemy push for sure. So
Gotcha. Yeah, I mean, you're operating on incomplete information in war and trying to make the best decisions that you can, and sometimes you get it right, sometimes you get it wrong. Sometimes you, like in this, we don't know what right or wrong. We don't know what happened there, but that happens in war. That's why we should steer clear of it the best that we can when our back's not against the wall. At any of those points, so that was in the defense. When you guys mount up to go in, is there dismounted? Do you take contact in dismounted areas on the offense or only on the defense? Okay.
So we pushed into another city, dismount from the tracks. We started pushing in the city, and this was like one of the first times where like, I'm inside a city, with my M16 A2 frickin' service rifle, like trying to find an engaged target. And I remember one time like shit's going on, man. Like Iraqi soldiers are surrendering, and it's like, what the fuck you do with these guys?
Right.
Fucking, keep sending them back. Like hopefully some pogues deal with them. But we're like the tip of the spear here, and like you got en masse Iraqi troops like surrendering and stuff. And I remember shit's going on, and I'm looking down this like alleyway in the city, and I see a target. Right, I see a freaking man dress step out of a doorway, and they start walking across, and like, dude, I've got to be on it. Right, I'm looking down my sights, clear sight picture, front side post, and they're just casually walking across the street, and I'm like, I don't know about this. So like I'm off safe, dude, fingers on the trigger, and I'm like, I don't see a weapon, and then I kind of look like a female to me. So this person is just like casually walking the street, and like they walk across the street, I don't fire. And I remember thinking to myself, like, well, that was my test, man. That was God testing me on my my internals, like what kind of person am I?
Your discipline.
Like yeah. And I remember thinking to myself, and again, I'm just a freaking 19-year-old, Lance Corporal in the Marine Corps at this point. And it's like, here was absolutely an opportunity to just, indiscriminately kill something. I didn't see a weapon. And now it very well could have been an Iraqi soldier with a man dress over him walking across the street. I don't know. It could have been.
Sure.
But here we are in the middle of a city. There's absolutely civilians there, somewhere. And that happened. So, I sleep pretty easily at night, thinking that, I made the right call there. But that was probably my first test as a man. Like, hey, am I an indiscriminate killer, or am I a freaking, professional warfighter? And I feel like that was a test that, God gave me. And not that I'm like a deeply religious person or anything, but I had several instances in my time in the Marine Corps in combat where, like, holy fuck, I feel like somebody was looking over my shoulder.
Oh yeah, man. Oh, I am deeply religious in my own way. I think everybody has their own way, but there was not one time I didn't pray, not one night or day that I didn't say, prayers when I was deployed, for sure. And then it's like, you have those situations when you watch these situations happen, you're like, nobody should have lived through that, and nobody gets hurt, and it's like, well, that's not possible, you know. Or you personally go through a situation where you shouldn't, where you know that the odds were so far stacked against you, and then somehow everything works out. Yeah, it's you call it what you want to call it, but I think it's definitely something divine. Yeah, that's wild. That's wild. So, did the guy ever come back out? Did he ever walk back out, or did it just, or female? No.
They walked out a door, walked across the street, and then I lost visual of that person.
And probably then they're not gaming our TTPs as much as they did later, because that became a thing later, like the passive and active spotting and staging weapons so that they could walk out without them.
It's important to note, like at this point, like in Iraq War, like this is very much a conventional fight, uniformed fight. Like we're in uniform. The enemy is very much, wearing their Iraqi army. Like the enemy I fought in 2004 was not the same enemy I fought in 2003.
Right.
This is Iraqi army. This is Republican Guard. This is Fedayeen.
Yep.
So
yep.
I was fairly confident that the civilian I saw across the street there was absolutely not Iraqi army. Now, if it was, hey, good on him. He got one over on me, but
yeah. Highly likely not at that time, I don't think. Yeah.
So
well, that's a good call. Forward, that's not like I just want people to know, especially for a first deployment, a young dude, especially a young dude that is overly motivated and desires to do that work, then have a potential target come up in front of you. There are guys that make the other decision. That's a fact. And whether that's not enough training or something in their head or, whatever, but that is when you're judge, jury, or an executioner and there's not rules placed on you, in my experiences, guys have been very disciplined and professional about it. But there are guys that aren't. And that is a true test of a man, too. When you get in the ultimate arena, anybody can indiscriminately kill. It takes a professional to do it with honor and do it righteous. And I think that the Marine Corps does a good job with that. It's not going to catch everything, but they do a really good job, even still with being professionals in war. Yeah.
And that was essentially my first person that I ever had in my sights in combat.
Check.
So that's an experience that sticks out in my head. But moving forward, we're getting ready to, now we're starting to kind of close in on the Iraqi capitals and stuff like that. We're tasked with conducting an amphibious assault across a river. Now, this was going to be like the first amphibious assault since, I think, Vietnam, since like Marines came ashore in Da Nang. But I want to say it was the Diyala River.
Yeah.
But in any event, we load up, we prep the tracks, and all our packs, like all the shit is like strapped onto the side of the tracks. So it's like, like we're going to splash and we're going to go in. And like anything you have in your pack, man, it's getting wet.
Yep.
So, just FYI. So, we prep for this. We're given the kind of the scheme of maneuver, how things are going on. And then we go, man, we freaking splash. We go hit the water. At this point, I am on air watch. And then, I'm sitting there. We had the air watch, fucking hatches open, so I'm looking back, I'm watching the tracks come in and hit the water, and we're going across, and that's
wild.
It's textbook. There's freaking explosions going on from like enemy artillery. You hear small arms fire going on. I mean, it was absolutely like a combat fucking amphibious assault. So it's like Marine, here we are, man. Marines fucking. I got some pictures. So I had an old wind up disposable camera.
Yeah.
A lot of people probably don't know what those are. The young bucks don't know, but you had a camera that had like cardboard lining, and then it winded up, and you take it, and it had like 20 pictures, right?
Yeah.
And I had a grenade pouch that I kept one of those in. So I'm like, we're crossing the river, And like I pulled the sucker out, and like, click. And I think I got 2 pictures from that. But
that's awesome. I want to see those.
Yeah.
That's too cool.
Yes.
Now, on the other side of the river, did you have pretty stiff resistance once you got over? Or?
So not initially. So we get through the river, we come up, and the other side of the riverbank was like a small Iraqi town. And I remember there was the roads were kind of narrow. And I remember looking at it and I'm like, man, I don't know if we can make it through there. So we get up and we start going down the road, and like our track starts going down this, and like I watched the lead track freaking hit this road, and it literally knocked these Iraqi building
like the walls
over. Yeah. They weren't like walls for a house. It was like the perimeter walls.
Yeah, courtyard wall or such. Yeah,
yes. And it like knocked them over, man. The track's just like parted like Moses through the Red Sea, dude. It just and we drove through these, and it wasn't a big town. We get through this, and now we've got everybody across the river. So now we're starting to push. Now remember, we're all in AAVs. We had Abrams tanks with us, but the Abrams cannot cross the river. They've got to go down, however far, and cross by the bridge, wherever that bridgehead was. I don't know where it was. I'm fucking Lance Corporal Smuckatelli at this point.
Yeah.
I'm just along for the ride at this point. But we crossed the bridge, so all the AVs in our company are across, and we start heading down this road. And at this point, there's an H-1, Cobra flying overhead. So, that's kind of warm and fuzzy when you see, freaking close air sport. And we're going down this road, and in front of us, about maybe 500-600 meters in front of us, is this huge like tree line. Now, this is hard to explain to people that haven't been to Iraq, but like parts of Iraq, especially when you get closer to like, civilization, like, Baghdad and the big major cities, like there are areas that look like a fucking Vietnam jungle. And that's what we had in front of us. It's just this huge tree line, and it looked like a huge major forested area. And we're driving down this road going towards this like forested area, and all of a sudden I hear the tracker in the turret yell out, BMP's in the tree line, BMP's in the tree line. Now, being a military nerd, right, like I knew Soviet armor ID before I even went in the Marine Corps. Like I knew what BMPs were, I knew what like T-55s were, T-72s, all that shit. So like my butthole gets this fucking tight.
Oh yeah.
Right. I'm like, holy fuck. Now by this point we had switched up the squads again. Now I'm a freaking machine gunner. Now I'm actually have the M240. I've got a pistol. We swapped weapons with guys. Like again, there was some weird stuff going on. I don't know why we did this, but they rearranged some of the machine gun squads. But I'm not complaining right now.
Right.
If you're going to be the actual gunner in a machine gun team, like you want the gun during a war, right?
Yeah.
So it sucks when you're back in the rear doing like company and battalion humps, but when you're in combat, dude, you want to be a gunner.
Yeah.
So anyways, I hear this BMP's in tree line, the freaking track maneuvers, up guns start shooting, 50 cal, is freaking flying, ramp drops. I run off, and it looked like a company attack range, something you would see at like 29 Palms, man. Fucking the whole company, fucking tracks getting online, ramps dropping, Marines running off, getting online, and we're assaulting this tree line. Dude, small rockets and AT-4s are going, fucking shit's blowing up. You just see tracers going. Dudes are fire team rushing, closing width on this tree line, and like I'm fucking laying waste in this shit. And like I don't know what the hell's in that tree line, but we're fucking it up, right? So we assault this tree line, and we finally get up there. We close with the 500 meters or whatever. Dude, I ain't bullshitting you. There was like 6 Iraqi armor in there. There were like T-55s. There were BMPs.
No way.
These bitches were abandoned.
Oh, okay.
And they were all oriented on the road that we are coming down. Had they stayed and manned their positions, it would have been a bad day for us.
It would have been a fight.
Now, I think we would have came out on top because, like, dude, an infantry rifle company has a lot of ass.
It's nasty right? They can bear, yeah.
Right. And you don't really grasp that until you go and do like an ITX. You run like range 400 and stuff, and you see all the assets coming to bear on an attack, a company attack.
It's a beautiful thing.
Oh yeah. So, you know, we have SMAs, we have AT4s, we have 60 millimeter mortars, we got the up guns with the tracks. So I think we would have done all right, but we would have lost Marines for sure had they stayed and fight. But we close with, we occupy, we take the objective. Dude, there was little fires with like pots of burning rice. Like, dude, they were just there.
Yeah, they bailed out when they seen y'all.
Yeah, they saw us coming down, and like I can't stress this enough. Like the Cobras that were circling overhead, they never saw these armor in this tree. Like they were that well camouflaged. So we had a Marine, man. When we closed with, I'll always remember this. He gets up on a fucking it was an APC, and I've got a picture of it on fire. Marine gets up there, fucking preps an M67 fragmentation grenade, and yells out, "Here's a coconut for you monkeys!" Throws a grenade into the hatch, and then jumps off the fucking armor, and that bitch blows up. And then like there's this big flame going at it. But
that's awesome.
I have a buddy of mine took a picture of it at that time, and like so I've got a picture of that sucker on fire.
Oh, that's
so
awesome.
But it was cool, man.
That's wild. I never had that experience at all. I didn't go against armor ever.
So and really nobody had. Like, when was the last time American troops went up against enemy armor? Like maybe Vietnam. I
mean, I had my share of technical vehicles, I think, in Afghanistan and Helmand, which was only a couple of them. But armor, no. And armor coming at me, which sounds like didn't really fight you guys either, but still, the fact that that's there and to be able to close up on it like that's wild.
Yeah, I mean, I take it back. Desert Storm, obviously, they're the same enemy. There's armor involved. But like, when was the last time infantrymen like closed with on enemy armor and like had to fight and use its assets?
Yeah, it's wild, very wild.
Yeah.
Now, did you guys were they all gone? Was there any enemy left?
I did not see in my purview. I don't remember any enemy, dead bodies or anything like that. I think what happened is they saw the Cobras, they saw our column coming down the road, and they were like, "Fuck it, we ain't dealing with this," and they jumped ship.
Yeah, but when your track guys ID them, and it's like you can't just ease up 500 meters and wait to be fired at. Yeah.
No. So when those tracks saw, now again, I can't stress this enough. Like, what does that track gunner see? He sees an Iraqi T-55 with its barrel main gun pointed right at him, right?
Yeah.
Because there was only one road. Where do you think those tanks are oriented?
Down that road.
They're going to be oriented on the road.
Yep.
So.
And did you guys bring air into the armor too, or no?
I'm sorry, say again?
Did you guys put air on the armor as well with the gunships above, or no?
I don't recall. There was so much going on. Like I said, we got online and we assaulted that tree line. So I don't recall if Cobras, and again, this is only like 500 meters in front of us. So, by the time somebody calls in, an airstrike on this shit, like we're already closing with. I mean, it was like, dude, it was, effective kill range for us.
Yeah.
Like it's time to close with the enemy. Like it's almost like a near ambush. Like you had to react and deal with this because it was right in front of us. So
I just didn't know if, since you already had one circling, if they could have come down and put hellfires on it or something like that.
They very well may have. I just don't recall.
But if you had everything you needed to deal with that situation on the ground anyway, It sounds like. But I'm a big fan of putting air on them, man. I know there's a lot of people and following some of the more raunchy deployments. I went to schools and stuff where they would try to say pin down was a frame of mind, and we didn't need to use air on something a squad can handle or a team can handle, and I'm completely counter to that. Like, if you have a tax dollars paid for piece of equipment that's a an unalive maker, use that before you go send people's sons and daughters over there.
Right.
So that's very much the angle that I would take, or that I ended up taking, was if I had any asset, that asset goes first before I have to go and close that, if able. Of course, you got a situation like that where it's like bang bang, you got to make it happen right now.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's wild.
It's also important to note that like we're one piece on the chessboard.
Sure.
At this point.
Yep.
Like there's, we crossed that river at one point. Well, the tanks had to go and take a bridgehead and cross, further down and stuff like that. So it's like there's a lot of stuff going on. This is just our piece of the pie. So although there was a Cobra circling overhead initially, like it may have been supporting another element.
Sure. Yep. I'm tracking that. Yep. Yeah, because that's a major operation. How many? Yeah. Now you had adjacent elements on either side of you too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Check.
So
check. So when you, this may be too dragging this along a little bit, but it's interesting to me. When you guys closed up on that, you had to ensure there was an enemy in those, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, like I said,
or was it obvious that they bailed out?
No, it wasn't obvious to me until after the fact.
Check.
So, like I said, that one Marine jumped up on that. It's brave shit when you think about it from that perspective. Like we are attacking a fucking tree line filled with Iraqi armor, right? Just us infantrymen and their AAV,
that's badass, dude. Yeah, that takes some gusto.
Yes, but I mean, there's no turnaround. Like,
yeah,
if we're in the middle of an open field. It's a small Iraqi town, large open fields with a road, and then like 500 meters from that is this big open tree line. So it's like if we were to try to retreat, dude, we're gonna be getting fucking slaughtered.
If they're there, yeah, and you don't know that at the time. So yeah, man, that's.
So
now, did the
we closed.
Did the AAVs lead the close, or did your guys' assault go in front of them?
I remember the AAVs essentially set up essentially at a support by fire. So they're rocking and rolling with their 50s and marks, and we're getting online and we're closing with. So
under their under their overwatch, yeah.
Yep. So they were doing exactly what they should be doing.
Yeah, that's dope though.
Yeah.
And then the grunts. You guys close on the actual armor. At some point, they have to turn off their Overwatch fire or their machine guns because you're going to close enough to where they got to turn off. And at that point, you guys continue assaulting up to it to the point where somebody jumps up and throws a grenade down the hatch.
Yep. So at some point, there was a cease or lift fire or shift fire, with those AVs, and then, we closed with on that tree line. So it was wild, man. It like I said, once we got in the tree line and dudes are clearing those Iraqi armor, that's when I started seeing like fucking camp fires and smoldering fucking rice bowls and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's wild.
So
I had a situation in Iraq in 2007 where we had taken fire we were at Kop Rawa, and it was 2 Chinese 107 millimeter rockets came in. Well, you know how they have they probably didn't then, but about it now, the counter battery, right? To tell you where it's from. So they got a counter battery, they get a grid. I was a squad leader and I had a squad of Marines on react. And so we go out. AAVs were out too, trying to locate this area. And before I go out, they say, hey, there's a cave system at this coordinates. It's very close to where the fire came from. We want you to check on the cave, right? So I get all the way out there. I have to pick up recons like camera rock. I stow that in my backpack. And this cave, man, was only like maybe 24 inches by 20 inches. I had to take my plate carrier off to get into the cave. But I had to check this cave, right? So, yeah, a little bit desperate of a feeling. I had my flashlight and I looked in there, but it's like once you get in there, the cavern opens way up and there's multiple different sections inside there. And so we had just taken these rockets over on Rawa. It takes me like an hour to get out to this grid, maybe a little bit more than an hour. Find the rock so I know I'm exactly right where I'm supposed to be. Then it's like, who do I send into this place? Kind of like your selective breathing private first class. But I didn't do that. I dropped my gear, grabbed my rifle, my flashlight, went white light going in and just kind of like popped in, and did one of these. I didn't see anybody, but again, like you were talking about, there was rice in a bowl, there was a smoldering fire, there was like maybe 11 head of sheep in there in like a different section. There was a section where you could tell the human beings, whoever was in there, was shitting and pissing in one part of the cave over, away from their cot and stuff. It was wild. That's a wild thing to come up on and know that probably they see you right now. Probably they just left and they're watching what's going on right now and watching you climb into whatever, that is. It wasn't it wasn't like a house. They had houses. This was in the ground and hidden. Yeah, that's a wild thing. When you're that close to them and you're on them and they're bouncing out, that's a wild thing. Because you see that in the movies, right? You see that in We Were Soldiers Once, in that end raid. Yeah, they're sitting there. They're sitting on ammo crates just like we do, eating their bullshit food just like we do. And, yeah, that's wild. Struck them.
I remember thinking about, there's a scene in Platoon when they enter the NVA bunker complex, and they're like, there's one soldier. He's like, man, they were just here, man.
Yep.
It was the same thing. So,
yeah, that's classic, dude.
Yeah. So after that, now we're getting we're on the outskirts, right? So the next major city we were in move into it was called Saddam City back then. They've since changed it to Sadr City.
Sadr City, yeah.
Yeah, but it was called Saddam City back then. So that was like the next main objective for us. So at this point, just outside of that city, I think that there was an order given or something like that. The realization was like, hey, we're not going to get hit with chemical weapons now.
Mm-hmm.
Like we're fairly confident in that. So we were finally getting able to take our mop suits on and put our tricolored desert utilities on.
Sure.
Which was just amazing because those mop suits, guys, they are not designed to be worn the way we were wearing.
Right. It's a killer.
Yeah. Here we are almost a month into this thing. I can remember one mop suit swap for sure during the push, but for the most part we were living in them for weeks on end.
Yeah.
And I remember they had two straps, right? I remember one strap broke off, so here I am Tarzan
going cross strapping it. Yeah.
To keep this thing up. So anyways, we got to take those things off, discard them, put our tricolor deserts on, which felt amazing. And we've been wearing the same socks.
That's like a little prize, isn't it?
Oh yeah.
Morale booster.
Yeah. So our feet are all fucked up. You can't do laundry. You don't do laundry during an invasion, guys.
Yeah.
You think about the Germans pushing into Russia during Operation Barbarossa during World War II. They're not stopping to do their laundry.
No.
And that's how it was for us. You only had so many pairs of socks, and you just rotated them.
Yep.
It's you wear a pair of socks for a couple days, and then you take those off, ball them back up, put them back in your pack. You take the next ones, and then eventually go back and get those other.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah. So, anyways, we changed into tricolor deserts. We're just outside of Saddam City, and we're rolling into this, and they tell us hey, the Fedayeen are in this city. They're pretty significant force, and we're expecting them to defend it pretty well. So we roll in. I think it was early morning. We start pushing towards Saddam City, and as we're getting out, we're probably, I don't know, maybe a click out from the city. I start seeing RPGs launching from Saddam City, the outskirts, heading towards our tracks. And I remember watching it because it was it almost seemed like slow motion because we're so far out that I'm watching these RPGs go by and I remember kind of watching it with my eyes like this, and I'm thinking to myself man, they're fucking shooting that shit at us.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that's wild.
Yeah. So at this point, we're moving in. The tracks are starting to engage targets as we're getting closer and closer. And I'm up on air watch. I got the M240 Golf, and I remember, and I start hearing rounds pinging off the track and stuff. So it's this is it, man. We're assaulting this city, and fucking shit's get real. As we get closer, I watched the dude pop up out of the ground. So he must have been in a fighting position.
Mm-hmm.
He's wearing all black. And we were briefed that the Fedayeen wore all black uniforms.
Yep.
So I see this guy, he's running, and I've got the 240. I'm up on air watch, and I'm just, cyclic rate, man. I'm trying to hit this dude. Now the track is moving. Right?
Yep.
I'm up on air watch, and the guy is running. So there's a lot of things going against me here, but I'm just, like Full Metal Jacket, the door gunner, just like
Oh yeah.
trying to hit this dude. And then the track takes this hard banks right. I don't know if there was RPG inbound or something, but they like bank right real hard. So I'm like turning and like trying to track this dude as we're turning. And I got to the point where I couldn't shoot anymore because we're turning so hard that if I were to continue to shoot, I got dudes behind me.
Yep.
And I was really close to the start of the the opening of the hatch towards the front. Like right in front of me is like the vehicle or the troop commander hatch.
Yep.
So we get to that point where I kind of stop shooting, and I look down the line, and like everyone to my left is engaging this guy, right? And we make that bank hard, and that dude was still running.
Oh,
and
no.
I'm like, I was like, either that dude is just like the toughest motherfucker ever and just took multiple rounds, or we just all completely missed him, and he's just the luckiest dude on the face of the planet.
Yeah, luck or we suck. It's one of those three.
But when you think about like everything that was going on, like the track's taking a hard bank, and
Sure.
everybody's shooting, essentially on the move. You got two moving objects. Our platform is moving, he's moving. It was tough, but I remember it was almost comical that everybody's shooting at this guy, and this guy, if he survived, like he deserved to live.
His friends will never believe him.
So
yeah, he went back and said he outran 3 tracks and machine guns and a platoon of Marines, and they're like, "Yeah, good story, Carl. Yeah. Go get them watched."
Right. So shortly after that, we get kind of like on the outskirts of the track. Ramps drop, we dismount, and we start moving into the city. And there's this huge like water river crossing, and so we start making entry into houses. And I remember there's an Iraqi woman inside, and she was kind of receptive of us. She's just like, we're looking at her like, hey, you live in a dirt hut, and third world nation, and I can't believe you people live like this. And she looks at us and she's like, why are you guys so dirty? Do you want to use my shower and bath to clean up?
Oh boy.
I remember thinking to myself, because our terp's talking to her, and because they're trying to tell her like, hey, we need to use your house to set up our position. I remember thinking to myself, I'm like, man, are we that dirty? And then that she thinks we're the dirty ones, and I mean, it put in perspective. Like, we had been in this attack for almost a month now. We've been living in the same shit. Yeah, we're really dirty. We stink.
Yeah, you smell terrible.
It's just, we're just acclimated to it, right? So we're not thinking about it. We just must have been like awful. Yeah. And this, this nice lady is like trying to offer us, to use her shower or bath, whatever she had.
That's awesome. So anyways, those people are like that. The ones that aren't against you, they're very. The hospitality in their culture is it's pretty impressive. So.
Yeah. So we make our way to the roof, and we set up. It was our machine gun squad that went up there. So we got two 240s. So our two teams set up on that rooftop, and we're oriented on this massive bridge that's about maybe 300 to 400 meters off to my front right from where we are on this position, and we're kind of covering it. We're the biggest asset to cover this particular part of the bridge. There might have been a track oriented on it too, but I don't know where it was positioned. So we're watching this, and we're watching vehicles starting to come across. Now at this point, a couple rifle squads had kind of pushed up and established, online some fighting positions, and they're oriented, and we're just kind of like trading fire, like with enemy commands on the bridge and on the other side. Now the other side of the river is pretty far. It's about 900 something fucking meters. Now the reason I know this is because eventually one of our snipers came up to the top of the roof, and he had a Barrett 50 cal, and he's up there, and he's kind of set up in between our two gun teams, and he's just going to town, man. He's sending rounds across that river, engaging targets on the other side. And what's crazy is like freaking there's artillery rounds impacting in the town on us. It was actually Iraqi artillery.
No shit.
Yeah. And one of the Marines jokes because he said that a piece of shrapnel landed next to him, and he said he saw property of U.S. government like written on it, right?
Oh,
so
shit.
I mean that doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
But then you think about it, we funded the Iraqis to fight the Iranians during the Iran-Iraq War. So it's probably one of those shells. So
That's
unless
wild.
it was friendly fire, I mean it's possible, but everybody always told
could
me
be a
it was
short round,
Iraqi
maybe.
artillery. Yeah.
No, yeah, I think our weapons are around the globe. So our weapons, our bombs, they black market sell them. Look at what's going on right now with funding two different. We're funding two different proxy wars right now, essentially. So it's definitely probably them. Well, I don't say definitely, but I think there's just as good of a chance as it was them as anybody, or maybe better. So, and then did you guys have artillery and support though at that time?
I don't recall, man. Again, I'm Lance Corporal Smuckatelli at this point, so I'm in my own little world.
It's funny. These stories are always, and like these chats that I have with people, they're always so introspective, right? Like I always wonder more, but depending on who you're talking to and where they were in the command at that level, depends on what story you're going to get and like what version, because your tale about these same fights is probably drastically different than your leadership's tales or your let's say company leadership or your battalion leadership. You know what I mean? So everybody sees it completely different. And what's interesting in your case is now you are a sergeant major. When you look at or talk about this fight, you're talking about Lance Corporal perspective. But when you think about that as where you are now, how do you cross that into like your training, your mentoring, and taking that Lance Corporal perspective and incorporating it in your sergeant major leadership?
Oh, it's awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, I think about like how I was and how I thought as a young Marine going through that. And like, I absolutely can, empathize with the young trigger puller, because I've been there, man. I've been in those shoes, and I think that's one of the biggest differences between somebody like myself, who's sitting there as a sergeant major billet, and let's say the battalion commander, right? Who, he might have came up as a platoon commander, but he was never that like bottom of the totem pole guy, right? That individual trigger puller in the platoon. Unless he probably got that experience at like TBS and stuff, but that's training. When you think about like combat. So I definitely think my experiences have helped shape me and guide me, as well as and we'll get to it eventually. But like I would go to Afghanistan as a platoon sergeant, right? So it's like knowing what those young Marines, what they're going through, what they're experiencing later on in life, in my later deployments in higher leadership billets. Like that absolutely helped develop me as a small unit leader going forward.
Oh yeah.
So.
Oh yeah, it's huge. It's huge, and the way that the U.S. military is constructed, and the way that lessons learned from World War I all the way through suggests that the best training is always going to come from the NCOs that just came out of whatever fight, right? And we do a really, really, really good job of that. But I, as an NCO, prior to heavy combats, I went to Iraq, had a little, some pop shots, some IED kind of situations, but never like a decisive engagement. So I went through that 7 months of different rural patrolling and urban patrolling, and I got a lot of that mix while I was in Iraq, but I never really got that decisive engagement. And so coming home from Iraq, I was more butthurt than anything that I didn't get that, and the gravity of it didn't set in. Now, when I came home from Afghanistan, where the entire thing was all the way up about the whole entire time, I was completely changed. Like all I cared about was training. All I cared about was getting through to the guys that hadn't been there, like what this was, because I now could speak intelligently to it. And it never changed for me after that. And what I see with guys, especially career guys, that once they get that deployment, they become tenfold worth, they become worth 10 times what they were to that element when they come back. The good ones that stick to it and have that bite. And so we need to keep doing that, and the Marine Corps does. Obviously, it's a great thing. Do you, in your commands, following that as you went up in the rank, did you reference a lot of these stories with your guys and have these real life situations and break them down almost TDG style with them? Is that something that you did?
Yeah, absolutely. During different training, particularly when I was a platoon sergeant getting ready to deploy to Afghanistan, and I had my own platoon. My experiences, because it's like you're always going to default to whatever your experience was, right? And like when we start talking about Afghanistan, like me going into Afghanistan, like I'm thinking what my last deployment in 2004. At this point, like I'm taking those memories and I'm applying them, like this is what I'm going into Afghanistan with, right? Once I get my boots on the ground and I'm there for a little bit, it's like, oh, I don't need 12 fucking magazines on this deployment, like leaving the wire, because of the way the enemy's TTPs are, like that's not what's happening. So
yeah, there's those subtle differences in different theaters. Yeah. Now, okay, we can get back. I don't want to jump too far ahead and cut the story out. How does that first deployment wrap for you?
So after that bridge fight, I don't want to gloss over the bridge fight because that was when we lost our first casualty.
Okay, let's talk about that.
Yeah, so I'm up on the building and there's enemy vehicles. Well, some enemy, some civilian, probably. I'm not going to sugarcoat this.
Sure.
We set up a defensive position on the side of the river, so anything trying to cross that river, was fucking potentially hostile. So when vehicles cross the line, they would use, if they thought they were civilian, they would try to flag them and tell them turn around. If they kept coming, then hey, it's possibly enemies. So several vehicles at that point were trying to continue to move, and I had to open up on them, man. And I remember watching. This is a huge bridge, and I remember this one vehicle. I put several bursts into it, and I'm on. This is fixed fire. We got the tripod on T&E, so it's like there's no doubt in my mind. Like,
yeah, you're on.
My rounds, my beating zone is laying into this vehicle. I remember putting a significant burst into this vehicle, and that bitch fucking did a 90-degree turn and went right over the side of that bridge and went nosedived into the river. So it's like, when you put that in perspective, like whoever that driver was, they either made the conscious decision, like, driving over this bridge is my best chance of survival, which isn't, and there's no way they could have survived that drop. Or that driver is killed and, just their natural reaction steered that wheel over the side of the bridge. But
sure.
That was very eye-opening to see that kind of stuff, because it's like, and I'm not saying I'm the only guy shooting at this vehicle, but like I'm putting 7.62 by 51 millimeter round after round onto this car. Like there's no question in my mind that what's my impacts are.
What's the range?
This was probably 500 to 600 meters.
Okay.
From 240, so easy work for 240. And that happened multiple times. Cars coming. I remember this one. I put a burst. Same scenario, right? Cars getting too close. It's not heeding the commands. I put a fucking burst into it. Car comes to a dead stop. Guy gets out of the car, walks to the front, looks at the front of the car, gets back in the car, does a U-turn, and drives back the other.
That's insane.
I couldn't believe it, man. But think about the fire discipline, because I mean, again, there's a rifle squad in the defense on our side, and it's like the rifle discipline when that guy got out of the car.
Yeah.
Again, it kind of falls back to my earlier scenario early on in the invasion. It's like somebody held their fire while that happened. And I had the sniper at one point. He's observing targets on the other side of the river, and he's got I think a 10 power optic on his that Sasser, and he walked me onto a target. So now I'm shooting essentially like plunging fire. We're talking like 900 meters plus, engagements here. I'm shooting at targets on the other side of the river, and the sniper is giving me corrections on.
That's awesome.
It was like really pushing out the capabilities of that M240. And to hear the sniper, I can't even see the target. Like he's like, hey, yellow Jeep on the other side. It's like I see it, but I can't just aim at it really with my iron sights. I need to adjust the sights, aim at it, and then from there, it's either my team leader or this sniper who's walking me on, giving me adjustments, and I'm making the adjustments on the T&E, and he's like, "Fucking impact, good, good shot." Give me
oh, that's fucking awesome.
Yeah,
now, you shooting at a vehicle or a person?
This particular engagement was a vehicle. It was I don't know if it was being used as technical or not. I could just make out that it was a Jeep. And the sniper was saying, "Hey, they're behind this, Jeep, and he's giving me corrections." And to have a sniper like telling me like, "Fucking dead on, give him another burst,
hit him again."
It was like the epitome of my machine gunner career, right?
Yes, that is so dope.
So, all right, so shortly out there, we were there in these positions for a while, several hours, and then. In the midst of an engagement, I remember seeing a bunch of commotion going on down below us from one of the rifle squads down there, at a defensive position. And I saw guys running back and forth, and I heard Corman up, and Corman walks over there, and one of our guys had taken a round in the back. Now, it's important to note that the interceptor vest, although we all had them, was relatively new. I think it came into service in maybe 2000. Started to get, now people need to understand, like when something gets introduced, like it's not overnight, flick of a switch, everybody has the latest and greatest stuff, right?
Yeah, it takes a while to field it.
Right. So we all had interceptor vests, but when we stepped off on the invasion, there was not enough SAPI plates yet. So if you were a medium SAPI plate, there was a shortage, and guys only had one. And most of them put them in the front for obvious reasons, which is funny because my old first sergeant major Archibald retired. He was telling me that as a company first sergeant, he kept his in the back because he was using the front to keep all his like notebooks and shit like that. And so that was kind of funny.
To just get him out of his, open it and get him out of his flap right there. Yeah.
Yep. So, but most guys only put theirs in the front. Now, me as I'm a big guy. I had large SAPI plates, so I kind of lucked out. I had one in the front and the back, but most guys only had one in the front. And unfortunately, PFC 1 Garza, he was hit by a sniper in the back. You guys got to remember, we're in the middle of a city, right? So it's like we have a defensive position on one side of the river, but the city is still filled with people on our side. Yep. So it's like we have a bridgehead essentially set up. So somehow a sniper got a shot on our guy, took a round right in the back, and he was killed right there at that position. So after they got him medevaced out, we left some blocking positions at the bridge, and then we had to start clearing this massive like neighborhood. And I remember just going, everybody, I mean, we were just essentially two columns. And we're just pushing down these roads, dumping dudes into houses. And I remember as machine gunners, when we would patrol, we would usually like, if we were in a stagger column or something, we would be like towards the middle, right? And, we were just in the middle so that we could react. If something happened, we could react. We set our machine gun up and start going to town. Yeah. So as the 11s are clearing these buildings, we're staying out in the road in the column while the 11s are pushing in the buildings. Well, I remember two started walking up. And he's like, "What the fuck you guys doing?" And I'm like, we're machine gunner staffs, aren't we? I got the 240. He's like, "Well, pull out your fucking M9 and start clearing buildings." I was like, "Fuck it, I get Roger that." So I fucking slung my 240, and I pull out my M9, and I start going into buildings, dude, with a freaking M9 pistol to clear them. I mean, when you think about like clearing buildings nowadays, like very methodical,
not then,
dude. We were kicking in the door, going in there, looking, checking real quick, and then we were out, moving on to the next one. So
did you guys come in any hot rooms or hot buildings?
I didn't, not during that clear. I can't speak for any of the other guys.
Sure.
But
It sounds like when the people seeing you guys coming, they're bailing out. At least the civilian folk.
yeah, I mean that happened a lot. I do remember like stumbling upon enemy fighting positions, like dug in prepared fighting positions,
Mm-hmm.
and literally in the fighting position would be like a pile of camis and a helmet and some gear. Like
Just
it was
left his
almost like the
shit and said, "Fuck
yeah,
it."
dude, it was like the rapture had happened, right?
Yeah, 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 yeah.
And they had floated off in their gear. And I got a Iraqi helmet that way. And they're, freaking Iraqi helmet, just grabbed
Yeah,
it, threw it on the back of my canteen.
yeah.
There's a little strap hung on the back of my canteen. And that's how I got my first war souvenir. Um,
That's back when you could get them home through customs, hey?
right. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So, I mean, I had some stuff confiscated from me, but I got a few things home.
Oh yeah,
So,
that's awesome.
yeah.
Yeah,
So I got some wine glasses hitting each other, but
all good.
yeah. So we cleared that city, and then we pushed into another major city. It might have been another part of Saddam City, and this was kind of like the culmination of the invasion because at this point, like I can't even like overstate this. The streets are lined with people cheering.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was unbelievable. It was like Victory Day parade. People are just lining the streets, cheering. There were so many people out in the streets that you were almost losing visual contact of like other Marines as we were, patrolling down the streets with the AEVs.
Mm-hmm.
There were so many folks out there. Just it was overwhelming, and you really got the sense of like, hey, we just liberated these people.
That's right. Yeah.
And I actually had an old man come up to me, and he spoke broken English, but I could totally understand it. And he's like, and I'm not fucking making this up, guys. I can't stress this enough. Like he shook my hand, like two hands, he shakes my hand, two hands. He's like, what took you guys so long?
Mm-hmm.
He's like, did you guys not know what Saddam was doing to us? And here I am, a freaking 19-year-old Lance Corporal, and I'm like, I was like, we got here as soon as we could, man.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know what to tell you. So, but I mean, those kind of moments really stuck out to me.
No, that's uplifting. That's the good.
Yeah.
That's the good stuff. And in Iraq, there wasn't too much good stuff. At least for the guys that fought there, you got to take those little wins. I had a guy on that did Ramadi 2003. And then I had another guy that came in and did it like the next era, the next year. And listening to the two of them stories was amazing. The guy that did the next year, they were like first boots on deck in that section of where they were clearing. And he said it was amazing because they were the only unit that got to be there when it was bad and see it through to Ramadi coming back. And like why he's talking about it was almost an emotional experience because he's like on post, and it'd be very similar, I would say, to you guys in this situation would be like, you seen the ugly, you fought the ugly,
Yep.
And that wasn't the city. And so that's what he said. So like in your situation, it would be that was Sadr City. That was the city. And they're finally coming back because it's been liberated enough to be safe, right? And he had a very similar notion about Ramadi in the early days. So that's the side that the older Ryan, the older me, loves to focus on because there's so much bad in the world and in experiences and in different details of careers and deployments that it's very rare that you get that good. And when you get that good, it's almost uplifting to the soul because it's like, what you had to do to get there. And these people have been just hiding, waiting to get their city back or waiting to get their home back. So if there's any good to be taken from war, from a grunt that's pushing, it's that right there. It's at least seeing that your efforts came to fruition for people that, probably deserved it. So, no, that's a super uplifting, kind of reinforcing emotion. And I never got that. I never got to see that. I mean, every place that I went, we might have made it better before I left, but we didn't get it to a place where people were pouring back in, and shaking our hands and cheering. That never happened.
It was a sight to see. And I don't think people really realize that took place. And, when you see like the video of the President Bush going on the aircraft carrier and saying like mission accomplished and stuff, that was why. because this was going on across the nation. Like the people welcomed us as liberators. Like you've seen the pictures and the video of like them pulling the Saddam
statue down,
statue over. Like that's what it was, man. We liberated the country. And the sentiment was that, and the insurgency had not started yet.
Right. That was prior to the insurgency. That's what I was going to say too. So, yeah.
So after that, just to kind of wrap up OIF1, we kind of transitioned into now we have massive Iraqi army bases that are filled with weapon stockpiles. So we did a lot of like trying to secure those locations because people were looting.
You're talking about like the RRC that left and just left all their stuff and surrendered. So now you got to deal with that stuff, or?
I mean both, right?
Oh, okay,
so it's like you have fighting positions all over the place with weapon systems in them. You got Iraqi army bases. Like think about if like the U.S. military was defeated in Southern California and had to pull out of Camp Pendleton, like. You got all those like bunkers and stockpiles, filled with munitions and stuff. So that was stuff that was going on. We'd have to secure those locations. We ended up primarily moving into a place called El Hilla.
Okay.
El Hilla was kind of our area of responsibility, and it was so predominantly calm that it got to the point where we were doing patrols with just like deuce gear and boonies. I know that is like hard for people to understand, but like, we were leaving the wire like that, like Vietnam style.
Mm-hmm. No, I think it's great. I love it.
Yeah,
you're more mobile. I love it.
We were adapting our gear to our conditions. And, so
that takes a good command, right? I mean, you're in command now, and you know how hard it would be to change an SOP for a unit on the fly like that, and maybe you wouldn't even do it. Maybe you would. But for commanders out there, I think that's a nugget of gold to just slide in your pocket. You shouldn't do what you want. I think it's better for your Marines to make them more maneuverable when able, right? And
for sure.
And it's not always the Marine Corps guided gear that everybody used in the past or on their last deployment that's the best. So as long as we're always
flexibility for sure.
Yeah. So, there was a time in Iraq where you weren't allowed, like, as far as units I was in, you weren't allowed to go out without the full FISB front, back, side sappies. You'd be checked for all that. And it's like, yeah, but I'm going on a 4.5 hour foot patrol. Did you consider that in this? And they probably did. And they're like, yeah, you're safer this way. But it doesn't feel like it when you're out of breath in the first 50-meter sprint. Even if you're in shape carrying that load. So
or the mission stops because you got a heat casualty and now you got to freaking medevac out.
Yeah. So so that's good. I like hearing the fact that you guys were adapting to that. And I've heard stories of 0304 Iraq like that way as well. And it's I would just commend the leadership of for allowing that to happen and for driving that for sure.
Our leadership was phenomenal. We did a lot of great stuff. We transitioned, and this is before like fobs were around, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like we had to build that stuff. So one of the places we moved into was an old Iraqi pistol factory. So we're building bunkers. We're fucking laying concertina wire. We're turning this old Iraqi pistol factory into our fob. We transitioned, from an invasion mission to now we're doing security and stability operations.
Yep.
So I remember the early onset of like an insurgency. IEDs weren't really a thing yet. We didn't know what that was.
Mm-hmm.
But the big enemy TTP at that point in the early days was they would go on overpasses with RPG-7s and they would shoot convoys as they passed through the overpasses. They would shoot them. So our CO came up with this like awesome mission where one night we would be inserted, kind of staggered along this highway, and we would build these like 2-man hides, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then the next night we got inserted, and like we went out. It was just me and another guy. We had one of those like fucking 5-gallon water jugs. We were loaded down with ammo, grenades, everything, right? We got inserted and we sat in these bushes in this hide we built the previous night, and we stayed there for 24 hours.
Mm.
And again, we're just complete autonomy, man. We're sporadically set up this highway, and waiting for these Iraqis to, come and try to conduct these attacks. Now, it never happened. I don't know. Maybe they saw, maybe one of the teams got compromised and it spooked them or whatever.
Sure.
That didn't work. But our commander was doing it. He was constantly trying to find stuff to address the current threat. They even had there were some UN convoys that were getting shot up. So this is gonna sound crazy, but some of our Hispanic Marines donned man dresses.
Oh boy!
And got inside a civilian vehicle, and it was called Operation Trojan Horse, and they were inside the UN convoy, armed to the teeth, but they looked like Iraqis, and that was just it was trying to catch them, trying to engage this vehicle. So that was one thing we did also.
That's dope.
But yeah, it was wild, man. I remember there was an Army MP unit that got hit. They lost a person. They called up for us. They were kind of in an adjacent battle space, so they called for support. So we rolled out there as a company, got online, sweep through. We uncovered enemy weapons caches. We took 8 freaking EPWs and took these guys back to Al Hilla. We had a human intelligence team there.
Yep.
And our own little freaking makeshift jail. And they interrogated the fuck out of those guys, man. But we got them. We got the guys that conducted the attack.
It's always satisfying, isn't it?
Yeah. Oh, what the best part about it is when we captured these dudes, we used to be able to put sandbags on their heads. That was our blindfold. So we had them in the back of our 7-ton, flexi cuff sandbag on our head. And, we're driving, and we went to the fob where that Army MP unit was that had lost the person. And we rolled in, and when those Army guys saw the EPWs in the back of our 7-ton, and we had all the Iraqi weapons that were in their cache, dude, they were fucking cheering us and stuff.
Oh, I'm sure.
It was such a great feeling.
Yeah, it is.
So,
yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
No. I'm just saying the feeling of that when you get the right guy and you get the right guy. You feel vindicated. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So after that, kind of one of our last major things that we did in country is we went over Babylon, the ruins of Babylon, biblical Babylon. And Saddam had tried to recreate Babylon, the old city. And to do that, he did some reproduction buildings and reproduced the wall, but he also excavated the ruins part of it, right? So Meth had set up their headquarters there, so we took over the security for Meth for a while. So I remember we were doing security through there, and we'd drive down there at night, just making sure nobody's going in there, so nobody's desecrating the ruins.
Sure.
And I'm driving through these roads, man, and I'm looking to my left and right at night into these buildings from Babylon, freaking Jesus days, right? And dude, the hair on my arms is standing straight up. I could feel the presence of just, freaking spirits or whatever you want to call it, man. Something was there.
That's wild.
I could feel the presence. And it was wild going through there. There's so much history and historical stuff there.
Oh, yeah.
And Saddam had built a palace on this huge hill overlooking all of it. And we had gone up there, and dude, there was fucking torture chambers down there in that palace and stuff. It really puts you in perspective of just how evil Saddam and his sons were.
Oh, Uday and Qusay, man, they were evil fucking people for sure. I studied them later on just to try to understand, better who I'm fighting and kind of reinforce my hatred. And I hate to say that, but when you're going over to fight, you need all the motivation that you can get to, to muster the efforts that you're going to have to put forward. And so, yeah, I did research on Uday that would suggest that he had, and I've seen pictures of him now, but he had lions and shit, and he had lions underneath some of his palaces, and he would just take people off the street, women primarily, and have his way, and then they get feed to his lions, and there would be the human bones down in these and it's what is that? How evil do do you have to be for that, or just culturally flawed? I don't know how you look at that. But that's why I said, people can make any argument they want when we were talking in the beginning about the reasons for going to Iraq and whether that's necessary or not. But when you're feeding fucking people to lions and you're gassing your citizens, like, maybe 9/11 shouldn't have got us there, but something should handle that,
Whether the reasons for going to Iraq were valid or not, obviously, we didn't end up finding the weapons of mass destruction.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, he had them at some point, right? He gassed the Kurds.
Mm-hmm.
Whether the reasons were valid or not, it doesn't take away from the fact that Saddam and his sons were evil people.
Sure.
Right. No different than like ISIS and everything else. The stuff they did to the Iraqi people was horrible.
Oh yeah.
Okay. Does it justify us invading the country? That's not my decision to call.
Yeah.
I'm a freaking 19-year-old Lance Corporal. I don't make the decisions. Somebody made that decision. We went. We did our job.
That's right. That's right. It doesn't have to be any more convoluted than that right there. At least to us. To other people, they can make it what they want. But to us, it doesn't have to be complicated.
So when you think the mass magnitude of what transpired, right? We invaded a country and took on that country's military with their civilian populace in place. All of those civilians were killed. There's no question. I think the overall effort that was taken and how we conducted that invasion, I think we spared as much human life as possible.
Innocent life, yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
There's no question.
No, we are the best at it, just so people know. And I think people know that now, but just in case you didn't know, we are the best and the top #1 country that goes out of its way to ensure that innocent people and innocent lives and collateral damage aren't, at a high number and an alarming rate. And it's kind of like, I hate to keep coming back to current events, but like with the Israel thing, you got like American citizens trying to dictate war policy for a country that was just invaded. And it's like, hang on a second. Like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
Why do you think we, or even President, Biden or whoever is running this country, why do you think they even have a question as to say what somebody else should do? Right. So, because nobody told us shit. 9/11 happened. We went where we wanted, bombed who we wanted, did multiple campaigns out of it. And so it's interesting when you see people, like Monday morning quarterback, international policy. It's always kind of strange to me to see, almost comical. So, anything else before we close that one out?
Yeah, before I end, OIF 1, I do want to point out a situation that happened while we were at Babylon, because and you'll understand why here in a second. But so we're doing security at Babylon for the MEF headquarters, and while we're doing that, we have React. So you have a reaction force to respond to any attack on the perimeter of any of the installation, right? So I was on React one day, and there's a river that goes through the area of Babylon. So we actually had a platoon on the other side of this river. So one day a CH-46 takes off, and they were flying, and I believe they clipped a power line, and it sent the bird nose down into that river.
Oh no!
So the aircraft crashes just outside of our positions at Babylon, so in the river. So I was on one side of the river. The other side, the platoon over there sends a vehicle. So we send vehicles out on React to try to get to the crash site as fast as possible. I remember pulling up, and all I see is the tail end of this 46 sticking out of the water. And the current on this river was flowing. You could see it. It was, hard and fast. And there was some like little canoe boats, chained up on our side. So, we're sitting there, we're trying to bang and get these canoes. I saw Iraqi civilians jumping into the water to try to swim, but they could only get so far, and they came back. What happened was, on the other side of me, one of the first vehicles on scene, Sergeant Kirk Straszewski, We call him Sergeant Ski. He jumped into that river to try to swim to that 46 to try to save the crew. And I didn't know this at the time, but I read this after the fact. He wasn't even that strong of a swimmer. And he jumped in there to try to swim out to those guys. And in the process of doing that, he got pulled under, and the river took him down, and he drowned. So, and I can't tell you enough, like, Sergeant Ski was just a staple of our company. He was the epitome of a Marine sergeant. Just a fantastic guy. Midwest Marine. I think he was the NCO that checked us in, or at least one of them. But just an awesome guy. There's a famous picture of him during the invasion. He's got his shirt's off. He's got his mop suit on, so he's got the little straps, and the guy's got a Marine Corps emblem tattooed on his chest, his left chest. He's sitting there smoking a cigarette. Just iconic American warfighter, right? I'll send you that picture, but
please do.
But just fucking great freaking Marine, NCO, Sergeant of Marines, sacrificed his life for his brothers, trying to save the crew of that 46 that went down. So that was those were our 2 casualties of OIF-1. So,
that's hero shit, man. So shout out Sergeant Ski and anybody that's like that, because that's what it's all about right there.
100%. So you can, again, not even a strong swimmer, you could think that wasn't even on the remote possibility in his mind. All he knew is that there were Marines whose lives were on the line. He jumped in that water to try to save those guys. Not even thinking twice about it. So
that's hero shit.
Right.
I love it. Guys, that's going to wrap it for us. We're going to have the Sergeant Major back on, and he's going to talk about his follow-up deployment in 2004, going back as a squad leader of machine guns on that deployment and doing God's work, earning some Valor devices or a Valor device and some pretty heroic shit that goes down there. And we're going to have him back on to talk about that in depth. We'll also talk about his subsequent Afghani deployment, and then how he ties these experiences that he's had in these leadership roles under fire into his command structure that he fosters now in the unit that he's in. So again, Brent, I appreciate you coming out. It's been an awesome almost 3 hours, and I look forward to linking up next weekend so we can finish this thing out.
Yeah, man, it's been a pleasure. Thanks for having me on. This is the first actual interview I've ever done where I'm sharing my experiences. So I appreciate you giving me a venue to vent.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I've done it a couple times now myself on different shows, and it is nice to kind of turn the seat around. It's different, right? If you're sitting on that side, it's a completely different feeling. Yeah. So all good, but I appreciate you. And just like every other time, guys, something resonates in you, you feel something moves you, or you know that the information needs to go out to somebody, send it to that some person, send it to that every person. And we'll see you next time on Choices Not Chances.
Well, that concludes this episode. Thanks for listening to Choices Not Chances podcast. Please share, like, and subscribe wherever you listen or watch our podcast. You can also follow us on social media at Choices Not Chances podcast. Thanks, and have a great day.
Louisiana Gun Shop, your firearm headquarters, specializing in concealed carry guns, ammo, and training. You can get your Louisiana permit with us. Also a large selection of AR-15s, or if you are that build-it-yourself type of guy or gal, we have all the parts to build and customize your own AR-15. Glock, SIG, Taurus, Ruger. We have all the brands, both in the store or at LouisianaGunShop.com.
Not too far. You're marking a building. Hit him. Yeah, that's good. That's a good shot. That's money. Yeah.